my children's therapist.
Are the players on your team your children? Hello, everybody. We are live.
Hi.
Welcome to episode 396 pre-show. Brian was just lamenting to me about how today has not gone well for his cupful team. And so what are we cheering for tonight, Brian? And how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm frustrated. My opponent has left, several points on the bench too, but I've left more. Plus I made a move that I was thinking about like 3 or 4 guys, and the one guy I picked is the only one who hasn't performed.
Who is it?
Adam Boqvist.
And that was like me being like, I'd be interested in him. He got an assistant on Friday or on Thursday, right?
Yeah, all the other guys have done way better. Or
What's Boqvist
like
doing today?
Moderately to way better. Boqvist at least has 3 shots today, which is probably like a season high. Because does not.
Sometimes you make the right decision and it just doesn't work out. Like 3 shots, if one of them went in, you'd be celebrating right now.
Well, yeah. Well, anyway, I've seen really good performances from the guys I didn't.
You're not going to say who they are because they're still in free agency and you're eyeing them for next week?
Well, one was JF Berube, who I just didn't know if he was going to start both on the back-to-back. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, he ended up putting up like 20 cupful points in those back-to-back starts. Damon Severson was another. And he's no longer available. He would have been a good longer-term ad, but he has a goal and 2 assists.
And he plays Monday, Tuesday next week.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I would have gone Severson over Boqvist, I think.
Did
you tell me that Severson was available at that time?
I did.
Maybe I was thinking like
Werenski
3 games.
was just freshly injured, and I think you were kind of excited about what it meant for Boqvist. And it's so what I need to happen tonight is I need Rickard Rakell to take like 10 shots, and actually if they all go in, that's fine, but I need big nights from Rakell and the Isles goalie.
I mean, it'll be Sorokin for sure.
Going to be Sorokin. The game starts in 25 minutes, and that game is going to determine. I need Brian Rust and Chris Kreider to stay quiet in their games that have already started.
Okay, yeah. Well, they're against my newly acquired Elvis Lickins, so he's shutting them down. So hopefully, he'll keep
Rust
it up.
has 5 shots, which is annoying.
He's good. That's typical.
Yeah, I know. He's really good. So I'm thankful that he doesn't have more shots. But anyway, it hasn't been. Like there are weeks where you can definitely trace to like mistakes that you made. Tuesday I benched like 20 points, and then like last night I'm like, okay, I'm not going to make the same mistakes again. I'm going to look carefully at my lineup, and I benched 15 points between Trevor Moore with a 2-point night and Mikael Grenland with another assist. Grenland did nothing for so long, and he's put up like 13 points from my bench this week.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it hurts. And Varlamov had a garbage start last night.
Yeah, Peterson outplayed him.
Stuff happens. It's okay. Like whatever.
Whatever. And you still have your health. That's what's important.
My Michael Bunting.
He's amazing.
Fed my opponent's Mitch Marner 4 assists. So Marner got like 27 couple points last night, but Bunting had 18 and a half or something like that, or 22 and the last one was the most infuriating. I was watching, and Bunting was like on a breakaway and took Nigelkovic to one side and then just sort of tapped it behind him for Marner to like come up. Like Marner was trailing, and Marner like had a free tap in. And I was like, no, you take the goal, Michael Bunting.
It's not his job. Michael Bunting's whole like career right now is making sure that Marner likes him. Yeah. Like if Marner goes to the coach and is like, I don't like this Bunting guy, something could change.
And this was huge for that because Mitch Marner like made the exact same play to, I think it was to Bunting, like not that long ago, like almost mirror image of what happened. And like when the goal was scored, like they both recognized whatever. It was very cute, but I was mad.
Oh, well. You're in tier 2 of the cupful. It's hard. You got a tough competition, tough decisions.
My team was so bad for so long. This is the first time I've had like this feeling in a while. And I'll tell you, I don't miss it. I don't know if I might have been a little happier. No, I wasn't happier losing, but it was a different kind of stressed. Anyway, but and anyway, yeah, I could go on. Earlier this year, I lost to the same opponent in the midst of a win streak. And it was like the same story. I've led comfortably all week. Then he creeps up on Friday, Saturday, and then pulls ahead on Sunday. Exact same story. So it's just frustrating. Anyway, know, can I ask your opinion? And anyone who's here in the chat?
Sure. By the way, hi everyone. We're going to actually record a podcast. This isn't part of the regular show. If this is your first time joining us, this is the pre-show where Brian and I get it all out so that we, only have good vibes for the actual show. But yeah, what can I help with? So
I was at my nephew's birthday party this afternoon.
Oh, it's not going to be hockey related?
Well, it's air hockey related.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Well, first off, he's like, "Who wants to play air hockey?" And I'm just like I don't want to play air hockey. Air hockey, I don't love as a game. I don't think it's that much fun.
So if it's a good table, like at the arcade, I think it's pretty fun. I don't like these home air hockey tables where it flies off all the time. Yeah, that's no fun. Yeah.
That's what happened. And okay, so one of the reasons I didn't want to play is because I didn't want to have to make the decision whether or not I would let him win or not. He's turning 5.
Okay.
So I went and I played him, and as I'm playing him, he's holding the thing with his right hand, the paddle, sure, and his left hand keeps creeping on to the table, to bat away, and he stopped, he caught at least one puck that was going in with his left hand, and his left hand was very active the whole game. And at that moment, I decided I'm not going to let this kid win.
Did you hurt him? Did you hit it really hard into his hand?
So no, I didn't. I did not do that. But what I did was I was running up the score a bit, and then I let him get back into it because he was starting to look sad. And I let him tie it up. And I was like, okay, in overtime, we'll see. Whoever wins, wins. In the next goal, he has something to be happy about. He caught up. And I won. And I didn't feel bad about it or anything. But then my brother, who's his father, I was like, yeah, he asked me who won. I'm like, I did. He's like, oh, you didn't let him? It's like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, no, I didn't. I went for it.
I don't think you have anything to be ashamed of.
Okay. Yeah. It was just I don't think my brother was saying much, but I also just wasn't sure if the expectation was that I let a 5-year-old win at his birthday party at air hockey.
I feel like your
goal letting kids win is good.
Yeah, I think your goal is, did he have a good experience? Did he have a good time, right?
Well, that's what I said. I showed him a good time. I gave him a thrilling comeback. It fell short, but he was really proud of the tying goal. He stopped the game to go tell his mom.
This is what you tell your brother. Have you seen Rocky? That's a feel-good movie. And spoiler alert, he still loses in the end. But that's fine. He went the distance.
And Josie had let him win in their game that they had, she was the first one to say, I'll play.
I mean, imagine if your whole reality is everyone letting you win and you thought you were winning for real, and then you try to go hustle people and you think you're so good, and then everyone's destroying you. That would be bad
if you're old enough to hustle people and you haven't realized yet that people are letting you win.
Yeah, I feel like it's just good to
being in the bubble.
Yeah.
30 Rock. You whatever. You dislike my 30 Rock references.
No, I think that if I ever had a kid, I think when I play them in video games or something, I probably wouldn't play my kid in air hockey because I'm not going to have that. But some video game, I think it'll be really cool one day to for when my kid beats me for real, I'm not going to go easy. I'll go easy for fun when they're really young, Right. But once they're smart enough to play, it's I want to give them the thrill because I'm sure that my kid will eventually be able to beat me, right?
Yeah.
And it'll be cool when they do it.
Exactly. That's how I feel too. One day you're going to be better than me at stuff. And it's not going to mean anything to win if you've just always beaten me.
Well, exactly. Then you have to explain to them, oh, no, actually, I'm really proud of you this time. Because this time, and they'll be like, what? So, yeah, you did the right thing. But okay, I think we should do a podcast now. I think we got Quorum here in the chat. We got Shams here. Hunter Mooney says, praise Jesper Brad. I'm with you, man. 4 goals, Brian, in 2 games.
He's amazing.
It's these people... Sometimes you overthink it with the games, right? I guess I did this to you. You were complaining that I recommended that you take both. I probably was thinking
you
take
were
3 games
overthinking it with the 3 games.
Take 3 games from Boqvist over 2 games from Severson, but Severson is better, so should have gone to Severson.
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, it was a really and I was very hesitant about Boqvist, but I just
Well, Ben grabbed him, and then I was thinking Ben grabbed
and then you
him.
felt,
Ben's good.
and then you felt even Then
I never was
even
planning
more
on adding
urgent.
him. You were telling me that I was feeling dejected. I never had the room to add anybody.
Oh,
I was just like, I was just telling you that you should do it.
Yeah, no, it was anyway. It's okay. Right. No, but I chose to take it. I weighed it, and I took the leap of faith there.
And Prince is here. The game's not over. He could still get a point for you.
Yeah, it would be great if Oliver Bjorkstrand, he scored on the one shot he took, but if you could take more than one shot, I would love that. He stopped shooting again. 7 shots in his last 5 games.
So what does it mean?
And in one of them, he had a goal and an assist, and he played under 11 minutes. I don't know what it means. I don't know what is going on with Oliver Bjorkstrand in Columbus. Like, I feel like an off-season
Maybe you have to
trade.
You have to watch these games, I guess, and try to see.
I need to scout some Columbus action.
Sometimes maybe just these data points aren't enough for us to understand. That's the most confusing. When a player goes all across the board, both in ice time and on the shot counts, it's really hard to read into what they're doing and find some patterns.
Especially when a game they played well in is the one that they saw a curiously low amount of ice time.
All right, let's do a show. 6 shots today. He's good.
Yeah, he's awesome. I wish I had him.
You know that I think I told you this on a previous show. I've got him in my Dynasty League, multi-cat bangers. He's like one of the most valuable people, like obviously aside from the like elite people, like low salary, contributes across the board. Who knew? I got him like late in the initial draft. Last season was the first season of the league, and he barely played. Remember, he got like injured for a lot of the year. And then this year, I was like, okay, Boone Jenner, let's see what he's up to, see what he does. He signed a new contract. It's like, mwah, what a hero. Yeah, I can't even take credit. Like, it was just like a guy I had.
He's really stepped up. Like, remember at the start of the year, we were talking about how Columbus doesn't have a center, right? They traded Pierre-Luc Dubois for Patrick Laine, and they were left with, they might have made, and Alex Wenberg went to Seattle. And I mean, the Dubois thing happened mid last season, but that was, Boone Jenner's really stepped up into an opportunity to be a 1C.
Who's changed your mind more about them, Boone Jenner or Justin Falk, who last episode you said, Boone Jenner. Remember when he was in Carolina?
I already answered you.
Okay, Boone Jenner. All right. Falk's still, we'll see. Okay, let's start the show.
Still humming along.
He's amazing every day, every game. Yeah. And he's top power play now.
Are you sure?
Oh, he's getting more power play time. He's getting more than 50%, right?
No,
am I incorrect there?
He's getting 40%.
Oh, wow. Well, he's getting a lot.
But Torrey Krug is like pointless in 6.
Torrey Krug's a loser.
And it looks like St. Louis has like, I don't know, the power play units are kind of similar.
Forgive me if I for that mistake about Falk, because he has power play points in each of his last couple of games. I just assumed that he's the one getting the power play time since he's actually getting power play points, which is what matters at the end of the day.
Right, but if he's also scoring on the power play from the second unit, then that's not as likely to carry.
Maybe his unit has fewer time because his unit always scores. So the other unit goes on, plays for like a minute, nothing happens. He goes on, boom.
I don't, it's hard. I wish I had better data on like who was on together on the power play.
I think we could find that.
Justin Falk was on for a goal with Perron, O'Reilly, Shannon, Cairo.
Yeah, O'Reilly, I'll bring it up on the show, has been getting low power play time lately.
That looks a lot like a top unit, though, compared to Tarasenko, Barbashev, Buchnevich, and Robert Thomas.
You would think so, but Anyway. Let's do it. Let's do this. All right. We'll talk about Forbidden West, I think, at the end, Prince, because we're already 15 minutes late. So let's start the show. Yeah! Yes! Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest-running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who are much more reliable than a lot of the goalies we're going to talk about to start the show. I'm your host, Dylan Dabrowski, and with me, as always, to break down crappy goalies, injuries, hot streaks, line combinations, the whole kit and caboodle, it's my very good friend, the fantasy hockey robot, Brian Combe.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everyone. We are reliable. You know we're coming at you almost every single Sunday night. Live on YouTube if you want to watch, but most importantly in your podcast feed. Thank you all for subscribing and listening to us all through the season. We're getting to a really key time where you're either competing, or if you're not competing, Now is still a good time to listen because we're talking about players and narratives and storylines that are going to follow through into the next year. So if you're starting to waver a little bit, don't make the mistake of pulling the plug on your fantasy hockey follows at this point of the season, because if your season is over already, then it's time to already get set for your next one and a better result. And that starts now. So thanks to everybody who's listening to us for any reason at the end of February. We really appreciate it and hope you are cruising for the most part on your way to fantasy playoffs.
I think you're talking to like 10 people. Like, it's like, yeah, people who are in tier 1 or tier 2 of the cupful, like when the competition's that tough, that's the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Fantasy League. Yeah, so there's some really amazing players that are probably still listening to the podcast and like not winning, because just like if you're in a league of like 14 Sharks, like, you know, someone's gonna have to come in last place. But I think most people who listen to the podcast generally do well in their leagues. I'd like to think. But yeah, tweet us at Keeping Karlsson. Let us know how you're doing going into the home stretch. But yeah, you're right, Brian, about one thing, which is that either way, we're gonna bring you some content today. We've got a lot of players to talk about, and yeah, some of them are young players. I'm curious to get your thoughts not only on for this year, but for the long term, including actually the first goalie that I'm going to bring up in just a second. Of course, first, let me mention that Keeping Karlsson very proudly presented by DobberHockey.com. I love that we can say that Dobber Hockey, Keeping Karlsson, synonymous. Like, they go together because that's the #1 fantasy hockey website. Great articles all the time. The tools at Frozen Tools are perfect. It's just like that site was built to help you be amazing at fantasy, and they're crushing it day in, day out. So check it out. Dobber Hockey, of course, and Frozen Tools. But okay, Brian, I wanted to start, like I said, talking about some goalies. Lewis and I actually, on the Short Shifts episode that I guested on Thursday, we talked about some goalies that were struggling recently. We talked about Tristan Jarry. By the way, Lewis and I both said, like, don't worry about Tristan Jarry. He had like 3 bad games, and he had a shutout against the Rangers right after that episode. So that answered that. And yeah, that was an easy call. Obviously, we weren't going to tell people to panic about Tristan Jarry. Last week, Brian, you and I talked about, so we're always talking about some struggling goalies. Here, we're just going to group them together. But last week, we talked about John Gibson and how he was pretty decent throughout the season and then stunk this past month. That continued. You actually found the data that February is always John Gibson's worst month, and it continued on Friday. He let in 4 goals versus LA on 20 shots in the 4-1 loss. Anaheim plays again tonight. That's going to happen after we're finished recording. It's going to be Anaheim against the Islanders. Or no, actually, it'll get started. So maybe we'll be able to check in at the end of the show and see how Gibson is doing if he got the start against the Isles. So I'm imagining with John Gibson, it's just like, let's wait for the calendar to turn to March, and then hopefully that will mean things will turn around.
That was really the only thing to hope for if you want to believe that this is a real pattern. And word is that Anthony Solars is getting the start tonight for whatever that's worth in Anaheim, and he's actually been pretty solid as a backup. So if the Ducks choose to start resting Gibson a little more, then Solars really is a legit option to spell him. But yeah, that was the analysis last week with all the tongue-in-cheekiness needed if we're going to use splits as an analytics tool, because usually you can't really gather so much meaningful data using split stats. But for John Gibson, this really did just flash in our eyes that, yeah, February is a tough month for him. And if you want to go back and hear the theories I had to share about that, then go and listen again to the last episode.
Okay, and actually, Shams is updating us in the chat here saying actually Gibson is sick. That's why he's not playing today. So I just checked into my league where I have him, just moved him into the IR before it was too late. So thanks a lot, Shams, because now I'm able to activate Carter Hart and maybe even make a move to start next week when I had Carter Hart in my IR at that point. So there you go. And Carter Hart actually had a very good game. He's not someone we're going to talk about right now because he did well for the Flyers in a game where Cam Atkinson also broke a cold streak. But that's later in the show. Let's start with these crappy goalies. And I want to start in Detroit with Alex Nigelkovic. By mid-January, Ned was looking like a super savvy pickup, both by Steve Yzerman, who got him for nothing in the offseason, and for anyone who snatched him up late in their fantasy drafts. Like, a lot of people thought that Ned was going to be, you know, at best, like maybe a 1A to Grice's 1B, but maybe even like a tandem on a team that we didn't think was going to be very good. But through his first 28 starts, Nigelkovic was sporting a 12-10-1 record and a .918 save percentage. Those 28 starts, by the way, through January 17th, ranked him tied for 5th in the whole league in games played. tied behind only like Saros, Vasilevsky, Demko, and Jari. And then he was tied with a bunch of guys. So he was a volume starter and he was doing pretty well. What a steal, right? But things have really shifted recently. Nigelkovic has led in 3+ goals in 8 of his last 9 starts, including a couple like real bad stinkers recently, including 6 goals against versus the Wild back on the 14th. Then another 6 versus the Leafs yesterday on Saturday before he got pulled in that crazy 10-7 loss that we'll talk a bit more about in a sec. This, by the way, has led to Thomas Greiss finally getting some starts, and he's had a couple good games recently. He had a good game versus Philly and a good game versus the Rangers, both wins where he led in only 2 goals. Then he did get thrown to the Wolves versus Colorado on Wednesday where he led in 4 goals, and then he came in versus the Leafs on Saturday, and that didn't go well for Greiss either. But aside, those are 2 tough games, and otherwise Greiss has looked decent lately, and it's hard to forget how strong Greiss was at the end of last season. Remember, it looked like Jonathan Bernier was the sure starter most of the way, and then for the last month of the season, Greiss was like a fantasy MVP for anyone playing. I'm wondering if we're starting to see another pattern. Like, Greiss hasn't been like that amazing, but it's again now. Nigelkovic looked like he was the sure starter. Now he's struggling. Greiss is doing okay. Brian, Nigelkovic was dropped in our keeper league. I saw you claimed him on waivers, and then actually an update just today in Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patriot Fantasy League Tier 1 Sweden. He was just dropped going into next week. So are these people making a mistake by dropping Nigelkovic because he had such a great start to the year? Will I be making a mistake if I don't add him, or will I be making a mistake if I do add him? Like, what's your take right now on how much he's fallen in Detroit?
You mentioned, like, you already sliced his numbers up one way. I'll slice them again. That Nigelkovic started slow, which was okay because that first month in Detroit was a disaster, right? I think that they might have played in the very first game of the season, and he gave up tons of goals, and it repeated itself a couple of times in October. But then Nigelkovic steadied himself with a .934 save percentage in 10 games in November. Since then, though, even with that hot run that you mentioned, Elon, he had another 10-game stretch where Nigelkovic was a .924 goalie. He is an .889 in 22 games since December 4th. And if anyone's like, he got destroyed in the Toronto game, he was an .894 before the Toronto game. So let's just get that out of the way. That was a heck of a game. What a fun game to watch. Except as I was talking about to Elon before, when Michael Bunting passed to Mitch Marner instead of scoring. That made me very sad. Like, I thought I'd get a shot. Anyway, whatever.
No one knows what you're talking about because this was on the pre-show. Brian has Bunting and his opponent has Marner. That's what he's talking about. But anyways, let's get back to Nigelkovic.
Bunting said up Marner so many times. It was whatever. Okay, Nigelkovic. He was up with the best of the league through 28 starts, even with those downs. There were ups and downs, but those hot stretches helped Nigelkovic get up with some of the best goalies in the league, as you mentioned, Elon, and now he's struggling with a .903 save percentage on the whole. Which means basically, I can slice this any number of ways, but the end result is going to be that Nigelkovic has been inconsistent. Imagine that, a goalie, inconsistent. This isn't a surprise, right? This is a new goalie. We're looking a little deeper, and Nigelkovic, he's played about expected on aggregate this year, performing about as well on the whole as you'd expect an average goalie would, facing the shots he's faced, except he's done it in a way where some nights he is way above that average goalie, and some nights he's way below that average goalie. And especially Nigelkovic has been bad over the last month too. And just another number to show how unreliable he's been. 53% quality starts on the year, which means it's almost a coin flip for whether he's going to put up a legit decent start for you or he's going to really hurt you when you start Nigelkovic in your lineup. I did add him in a keeper league in which I'm a playoff bubble team and probably trending away from the playoffs rather than towards a playoff spot. And so adding him was very much a move geared towards next year, as he looks to have a pretty good shot to be a starter on a rising Red Wings squad. And my team doesn't have any surefire starter quality keeper goalie options. So why not add Nigelkovic and see how the rest of the season plays out and where he's at when it's time to make keeper decisions. But for the rest of this season, I guess my theory, aside from saying that, well, he's a goalie, he's inconsistent, is that maybe Nigelkovic is hitting a wall. He played just 23 games last year. Now he's up to 34 starts already on a team that ranks in the top 10 in shot attempts allowed per game, like in the bad way, like they allow amongst the 10, like they are in the top 10 teams in giving up a lot of shots. And so I hope better for Nigelkovic in the future, and I'll take what I can get from him this year. But I think the takeaway from Nigelkovic's play, because look, I can try and predict the rest of the season. Maybe he'll stabilize. I feel like it's going to be a lot of what we've seen already. There's going to be some great stretches. There's going to be some struggles. But in a keeper or dynasty format, now may be a decent time to kick tires if you don't have Nigelkovic and see what the cost is to acquire him, because he could be the starter and grow with this Detroit team that has a lot of room to grow.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think now it's always good to try to buy low on a guy in a keeper league who you think is going to have a strong future. But as far as this season goes, I was looking at him, like I actually have one goalie in the cupful. I just have Darcy Kemper, and I would love to fill that second spot with someone reliable. And like before, that would have seemed like such a great opportunity to get him. I'm just looking at next week though. Detroit's going to play Carolina on Tuesday, then Tampa on Friday, and Florida on Saturday. So he'll probably at best get 2 of those starts, and they're both going to be against really tough teams. So I'm scared to grab a goalie who's just going to give me negative points potentially. Though it is a good opportunity, so it's something I'm gonna have to think about. But he's been really bad lately, giving negative points to whoever's been rostering him. That's obviously why he's been dropped. So I'm going to be interested to watch and see what he does. I'm also interested to see what Thomas Greiss does, because we saw this last year. Like I said, it's too early to chime in probably on him, but I'm keeping a lookout on him and to see if he can finish the season strong as well. In that game versus the Leafs, by the way, there was one other stat line that I wanted to mention that really jumped out at me. That was Filip Hronik. He scored a goal and distributed 3 assists in that near comeback. And Hronik is someone who I actually rostered in the couple, like for a lot of the season. I was feeling pretty good about it, but then Detroit had such a sparse schedule over this past month, a lot of weeks with playing only 2 games. So I just let him go, obviously, and I didn't regret it. He hasn't even done anything. But hey, this 4-point game today or yesterday looked pretty good, and he's only 16% rostered on Yahoo. Now Detroit is going to go back to having normal schedules moving forward for a little bit, though again, the competition is looking a little bit tough. But on the season, Hronik has 28 points in 49 games. It's a 47-point pace. So is that something that you think he can keep up overall, or is that too high? Like a 47-point pace for a defenseman is really impressive. I'm just curious to get your sense now that he's been dropped in a bunch of leagues. He's available for all of us, and we need to decide whether it's time to jump in on him. Normally, you're excited about a 47-point pace defenseman in free agency, but for some reason, I'm not really feeling it with Hronik just because he's, second power play behind Seider. So I just want to get your general take on if you think he can keep up what he's been doing all year moving forward.
You're right to not be so big on what you've seen from Hronik, even though 47-point pace is something we normally get excited about. One, it's rare to see a goalie. It is something to get excited about. One, because it's rare to see a defenseman get a 47-point pace, but it's especially, sorry, I'm just going to do that again. Okay. Your question was, you're down on him, and are you right to do that? I understand why you're down on Filip Hronik. I think I was down on him even before you were. I was down on him before it was cool, Elon. But it's not to say anything great, because he's had a great run recently. But the reason to be skeptical of Hronik's 47-point pace is one, what you just mentioned. He's on the second power play unit. It's hard for a defenseman on the second unit to have a point pace that's above 40 points for most defensemen. So that's one reason to be not optimistic that Hronik can keep this up. Another reason would be, the 22 games prior to this run, where Hronik had just 9 points in that 22-game stretch. I mean, you've asked about him a lot this year. My answer is pretty much the same as before. From the second unit, I don't expect much more than a 40-point pace the rest of the season. I expect him to be an inconsistent contributor too, because that's what he has been all season. I think he's ridden a high points participation rate at 5-on-5. That's helped him get up to this 47-point pace, and I do not see it as sustainable. Maybe Hronik will still have, 1 or 2 more hot runs in him, and he can be decent at putting shots on net, but he's not someone who feels like he'd be a lot of fun to depend on as your third defenseman or even a fourth defenseman in a league where, like the Cupful, the KKU PFL.com, the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, where you have 18 guys on your roster. I just don't see that Hronik is a must hold there. I consider him in the same kind of realm as someone, or just below actually, the same kind of realm as Sergachev or Damon Severson, who's hot right now. So not a great guy to bring up in this conversation because he's jumped a tier really since what we've had him in for a while. But that's about where I would position Hronik, below Sergachev, below Severson. And last I checked, those guys were available in plenty of leagues. So you don't need to go and run and grab Hronik.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm looking at the schedule next week again. So again, it's Tuesday, Friday, Saturday. So if come Friday, you need a defenseman, you look at your Saturday lineup, you have some forward that you're going to be benching because a lot of teams are playing in an open D spot. Maybe he's a good guy to grab on Friday, get the Friday, Saturday, and go from there. But I agree with you that maybe he's not like a long-term hold, though he is probably a high-end defenseman free agent. For like whenever I'm looking for a defenseman in free agency, I think he's going to be among one of the top guys that I'm considering. On the other side of that game that Detroit played against Toronto, we have Jack Campbell, who we've already discussed recently, and my head's been all over the place with this guy, right? I said I was worried about him on the pod with him struggling to end January, and Marazzic looked decent. We just had this conversation, I think, like 3 weeks ago or so. Then he actually had a couple good games in a row versus Seattle and Pittsburgh. And then I was starting to think, maybe I was wrong to be like so down on Jack Campbell. Then Ben from Short Shifts traded him to Jordan in my couple division, and I panicked. Okay, we have a feature in the couple where you can do a counter offer after a trade. You have 24 hours to try to offer something better. I made some offers to Ben that he rejected. He said he wanted Nylander. I like really considered it. I was talking to Brian. I almost like pulled the trigger. It was a package. It was like Nylander. I was gonna get Hyman. I don't want to get into the details, but anyways, I decided to pass in the end, and now it's looking like once again I'm happy to have passed on Jack Campbell because he's starting to look bad again recently. 5 goals against versus St. Louis, 4 versus Columbus, and most recently 5 goals against of the 25 shots versus Detroit yesterday before he got pulled. Then you look at Pedro Marazzic, who started this week with a stinker, letting in 5 goals versus Montreal, but Marazzic followed it up with a really good game. 1 goal against in a win over Minnesota on Thursday, and then he also got the win in relief on Saturday versus Detroit, even though Marazzic didn't do that well. He led in 2 goals on 8 shots. So I don't know, this whole Leafs goalie situation just seems super volatile. I guess it's kind of like what you said about Nigelkovic. It just doesn't seem like something we can super rely on. Like, I know Toronto's a good team, but I don't know. At this point, I don't really know what the question is. I guess we can't really recommend for people to drop Jack Campbell, but just wanted to get your general take, I guess, on this situation. Like, do you think I'm going to be changing my mind about him just over and over again throughout the rest of the season as we see him and Marazzic trade starts and Campbell go from good games to bad games?
One thing that Jack Campbell has in common with Nigelkovic, who we just talked about, is that he doesn't have a big track record of being this starting goalie or starting as many games in the past as he has so far this year. Campbell had never started more than 26 regular season games in 1 year, and now he's already started 37 games. That's all but 15 of Toronto's starts this year. So another consideration that maybe this guy is just getting tired because this is a bigger workload than he's ever dealt with before in his career. But as we explored on a previous show, and like Nigelkovic too, Campbell has seen this huge swing from great to bad in all his numbers over the last month or so. And I think we're just at this moment again where it's a goalie without a ton of experience and none as a legit number one starter showing himself to be inconsistent. And I don't think we should be so surprised to see it. The flip side, like the good news in the comparison to Nigelkovic, is that his quality start percentage is higher. It's above 60%, which means he's been more reliable in not blowing you up, except in really bad starts, which is a stat that basically counts how many like total awful blowups you have. I think the number is below 885. Jack Campbell has 3 more really bad starts. He has 8 really bad starts compared to Nidelkovic's 3, but it's rarer that Campbell has like a sort of bad start. Anyway, we're just trying to split hairs to try and make sense of this, but I think the bottom line is, like Nidelkovic, it's reasonable to expect volatility, but you can still hope for calm in Campbell's play rest of season. I don't think it's totally beyond him. The good news for Campbell is that Marazzic has not proven himself up to the task of starting, even though his track record suggests he should be up to it. So there could be a run for Marazzic. There might not be. There's really, like you said, not much advice other than to not value Campbell or not consider Campbell to be a sure thing, whether you're trading for him or trading him or just trying to figure out how much you can rely on him to carry you week to week. You can't. But as a guy, he's still a guy who could be good, has great upside, but is no guarantee, which is a great way to describe a lot of goalies in the NHL. And I wish I had something a little more definitive to share with you, Elon, but that's about the extent of my Jack Campbell analysis.
I mean, I'm taking a risk here starting the show bringing up a bunch of goalies because I'm sure the answer to all of them is like, we don't really know. But it's just interesting to bring them up and discuss what's going on. And yeah, you bring up a good point that he's never played a full season as a starter. So maybe it's starting to wear on him a little bit. And apologies, by the way, once again, for bringing up that game from yesterday versus Detroit. It was so interesting. So much happened. And I got to say, one player that I'd be really concerned about, or at least I would have been really annoyed about if I had him on any of my teams yesterday, is John Tavares, because the Leafs scored 10 goals in that game. And Tavares wasn't able to produce a single point. I'll be honest, I'm even a bit shaken as a Nylander manager. I have him in a couple of my leagues. He scored the game opener, so I can't be too upset. He scored a goal. You're never upset when a player of yours scores a goal, but like Leafs scored 10, and he didn't do anything after that first goal to start the game. But I guess this is focused on Tavares, because I recall last year around this time, again, a lot of patterns repeating themselves. I remember talking to you on the podcast about how Tavares was on a bit of a cold streak, and it kind of seemed like Toronto was just like all the offense was coming from the Matthews-Marner line, I guess with Hyman at the time, and it seemed like the Tavares-Nylander line was just more of like, I don't know, like still like producing, but just like not at the same clip. It didn't seem like they were getting as many offensive opportunities. And like, it's kind of looking like it this way again. Like Tavares has 8 points in his last 12 games, which is like fine for most players, not like super exciting, but also those 8 points are all assists. He hasn't scored a goal in his last 12 games, and he scored 17 goals in his first 39 games. So Tavares has just gone from scoring every second game almost to just nothing going in for him. I know there's been a lot of chatter in our Discord lately about the Leafs having a great playoff schedule. There's a lot of people talking about like wanting to try to trade for someone like Tavares, and does seem like a good potential buy low time if we like agree that this is a buy low time and not just like this is what he is. So yeah, let's like look into this guy. Is this recent stretch concerning to you at all? Like Brian, you were complaining about how you have Bunting and you were upset that Bunting kept on passing to Marner, who your opponent had. So like every time you got an assist, your opponent was getting a goal. Imagine how much more frustrated you'd be if you had Tavares and Marner was getting all these points. You were getting like absolutely nothing. It's kind of crazy to kind of think that you'd prefer to have Bunting than Tavares, but like I almost feel that way, which I know is kind of crazy. So what's your general sense on Tavares right now? How nervous should those John Tavares managers be? I was one last year. I traded him and ended up regretting it. This year I don't have him in any leagues, and I'm kind of happy about it at the moment.
Bunting is a little less stressful of a roster than Tavares just because the bar is lower. So when he isn't producing, it's like, yeah, that's what I expect from Michael Bunting. But he's also really locked in right now with Marner and Matthews, and that line is flying. So he's a great guy to have. He's someone who doesn't disappoint you too much because you know it's coming. Whereas John Tavares, you expect consistent, steady, reliable production. But instead, Jonathan Tavares is having Jonathan Tavares. I just called him Jonathan. John Tavares is having the kind of season that's going to make anyone rostering him swear to never roster him again, right? We all know these players who we've had on our rosters for one season or two seasons or over the course of time who frustrated us so much that we're never going to want them again. I feel like that's what Tavares is doing to a lot of people who put their faith in him this year. Not only because he was silent in those 10 goals against Detroit, but there was a run of 3 games just about a month ago when Toronto scored 20 goals and Tavares pointed on just 2 of them. So the question is Tavares flaming out and not contributing in his what's now decidedly a 2C role because Matthews is basically in the middle stages already of making his case to be a generational superstar and we have a clear top line in Toronto? Or has it just been bad luck for John Tavares when the Leafs are scoring a whole lot of goals and he's not getting in on them, and it's really glaring because of all the goals they're scoring? And I would actually say that on the whole, I'm not that worried about John Tavares, and I don't think we should be overreacting to these very visible moments when John Tavares isn't producing. On the whole, he's still on a near 80-point pace. So look, John Tavares has contributed at other times and not just left you high and dry all season long. And I think that near 80-point pace also looks pretty sustainable. Consider that Tavares has had a similar pace the last 2 seasons as well, which has been disappointing after Tavares debuted in Toronto with an 88-point campaign. But really what it just shows us is that Tavares is in this mid to high 70s range. And that's about where we can pencil the guy in from here on out. The only difference between this Tavares and the one a couple years ago that had upside above 80 points is that now Tavares is seeing about a minute less of ice time each night at 5-on-5. And honestly, that's it. The way Matthews, Marner, and Bunting are going, there's no more 1A, 1B top line situation. You have your top line and you have a very strong second line, but it's still a second line that features John Tavares. And I think that limits his upside from being any higher than 80 points. So I think the only change we need to make, don't overreact to his lack of visibility on the score sheet in this 10-goal game against Detroit in that 3-game run a month ago. But just make the change from thinking that Tavares is like an 80-point guy with upside beyond that to Tavares actually being, say, a 75-ish point guy, give or take, with not much upside beyond that, which makes him, Elon, a good trade target. I think, especially for anyone who's disappointed him. I like the way you're thinking. Toronto's got a good schedule. Anyone who's got him right now is probably feeling really frustrated. Go and see what he costs to acquire, because I think he's still a pretty good player.
I'll bet you that at least one of our listeners, if you have Michael Bunting, I'll bet you could send him to the Tavares manager and get that deal accepted. I just have a hunch.
If you send us a tweet at Keeping Karlsson, if you pull that off.
Yeah.
I have Bunting. Maybe I'll make that offer.
You could try. I mean, you're in tier 2 of the Cupful. It might be harder.
Not going to work.
But maybe you want to hold Bunting, because again, look at your playoff schedule if you're going to make it for your fantasy playoffs, because I think like the Leafs play like 4-4-4 games or 4-4-3 games. Maybe you want to look and trade like a Vegas people. A lot of people have been talking about how Vegas has a bad playoff schedule. Again, when I say a lot of people, I'm assuming like the whole world is like our Discord, because that's where I hang out all the time. But a lot of people have been talking about potentially trying to trade like even an Eichel in a one-year league, since like the playoff schedule isn't good and he's like looking pretty good. So I don't know if you trade Eichel for Tavares, but if you're going to get a bunch more games, I don't know. But I know you're saying not to worry too much, but still like a 75-point guy for Tavares is still not that great, right? So if you can trade like a 80-point guy or a 75, whatever. We told you the numbers, and then you can go from there, make your own decision. Let's go to the next struggling goalie. This one might be already in the back window, because Elvis Lickins was struggling. Then he got injured, but he returned from his injury today versus Pittsburgh, and he actually did pretty well today. This game just ended. Pittsburgh won 3-2. It's actually disappointing. Lickins was having a really good game, but then let in 2 goals right at the end. But still, he had 40 shots against and stopped 37 of them in a 3-2 loss. Before that, Elvis is a lot like Nigelkovic, right? He started the season decently. By January 23rd, he had played 25 games, had a 14-10-2 record, a 912 save percentage, which isn't amazing, like holding his own on like a rebuilding team. But his last 7 games before getting hurt, Elvis, it wasn't looking pretty, right? He saved for one goal against Jam versus the Habs on February 12th. His other goals against counts in his games were 6, 7, 4, 3, 6, and 4. So Brian, I actually just traded a 4th pick in our keeper league to get Elvis Lickins in that same league where you picked up Nigelkovic. I only had Hart and Gibson, needed some goalie help. Now I'm going to put Gibson in my IR like I just mentioned. Brian, do you think that trade is going to end up working out for me as we head into this final stretch before the playoffs? Or are you concerned that Elvis just like isn't the stud goalie? Like a lot of people were talking about him as like a top 3 like prospect goalie a couple years ago. He really had an amazing initial season with Columbus, but he hasn't looked as like, he already like his numbers went down a bit last year, and they've looked even worse this year, save for this good game today against Pittsburgh.
I like Elvis Lickins still. I liked him at the start of the season, and it hasn't been the season we dreamed for Lickins, but it's been it's been rocky. I don't know what more we can say. By the way, JF Berube, who we did mention last week, I don't think we saw him performing quite as well as he did on that back-to-back on, what was it, Thursday and Friday. So way to go, JF Berube. But I don't think it's like he's coming for Elvis Lickins' job. But it is funny to see that, the Jackets have been looking for a backup goalie for at least a couple years now, because Joonas Korpisalo has proven himself to not be reliable. And here it is. Maybe it's JF Berube, who would be nice to see lock down a longer term NHL role than a guy who shuttles back and forth and is occasionally put on waivers. But yeah, I'm not really concerned about Elvis Lickins as a long-term starter in Columbus. First off, just for context, if anyone is like, oh, is Berube going to push for starts? Maybe, but Lickins is 3 years
don't
younger.
Say maybe.
Okay,
no
well, I was going to take it back. So instead of Lickins, say, starting 4 out of 5, maybe he starts 3 out of 4. I think he's still going to start a lot. Like, he might not have to be a workhorse, but he's still definitely Columbus's guy. And, I'm also just going to make some comparisons to Nigelkovic and Campbell because Lickins has had a tale of two seasons, right? He's been even more unreliable than any of them actually, with a just awful 45% quality starts percentage. And I wonder if that's also in part because he's now tied. Actually, tonight he surpassed his career high games started with his 32nd start of the season. But unlike the others, he's had a little bit of injury trouble this year. He wasn't dressing for, 6 games total. And earlier in the season, he backed up for 3 of 4, even when it looked like he'd been playing okay. So I'm not sure if he was 100% then too. So Merzlikins may need a reset, but long term, I'm not concerned. And of the guys we've discussed, he's definitely the one I have the most confidence in to find his form again before the year is up and continue being a high-end fantasy option as time moves on. Like I would rather him than Nigelkovic in a keeper. And I think, I don't know, him versus Campbell is a tough one. Just Merzlikins is not someone who I have to worry about losing his job. So maybe that's why I have him above the other two.
Yeah, it's fair. I think that there's this guy like Tarasov that Victor's been saying he thinks might have like overtaken Merzlikins as like the long-term guy in Columbus, but probably not next season, right? Or maybe they could become a tandem at some point. But for now, I definitely agree with you that Merzlikins is the starter. Okay, Brian, but so if you're saying the guy you like so far of the goals we've talked about is Elvis Merzlikins, I'm sure it's going to change. So this next guy I'm going to bring up, Mike Smith. No, I know for sure you're not going to be into Mike Smith. Let's bring him up. Okay, I just gave up on him in my Dynasty League. I dumped his contract in a trade with Sakib to acquire John Klingberg, and I gave picks as well. Mike Smith is still 46% rostered on Yahoo, but he's looked so bad in his last couple of games. He got pulled after letting in 4 goals on 7 shots versus Minnesota last Sunday, then another 4 goals on Wednesday versus Tampa on 22 shots, so 2 bad games. But I wrote all of this, and then Mike Smith played a game today and actually did pretty well. He started against Carolina, and while Edmonton lost 2-1, he stopped 27 of 29, so a good game for Mike Smith. So hey, he's not like totally dusted, but he definitely seems to be an unreliable guy at this point, and I think we're going to start seeing him getting dropped in more and more leagues, especially because Mikko Koskinen, I mean, this happens all, I'm getting such deja vu here, but yeah, Mikko Koskinen played well in a big win over the Panthers on Saturday. He stopped 44 of 47, and by the way, Stuart Skinner is in the minors for the Condors, and he just had a shutout, I saw on Twitter. So like, 2 good options that might be better than Mike Smith at this point. Got to imagine Smith is going to be at risk of getting waived potentially if they want to try to bring up Stuart Skinner. I don't think anyone would claim him. Maybe they would. I don't know. Now I'm just speculating. Brian, what are the chances that I'll regret having dumped Smith before my fantasy playoffs? I just didn't want to have a guy that I couldn't rely on. Then I thought also since he has a contract next year, I might as well just like dump him now. But of course, then he goes ahead and has a good start, just like Cam Atkinson, who I dropped and he had a good game. Basically, anyone I drop always has a good game after I drop them or trade them.
Right. That's the post-drop bump, which a lot of us feel and gives us a lot of very troubling feelings. Mike Smith, I don't think you're going to totally regret it. It's hard, right, with goalies. And he's been one that we haven't been able, or I have not been able to figure out. Even when he's playing well, I haven't bought in completely. And eventually was just beaten into submission by the good play he had. And like, yeah, okay, we'll see how well he does and for how long. But Mike Smith, yeah, I just don't know. I think he's going to find himself more and more on the outs now that Dave Tippett isn't around. He did have a decent start today, but the knives are coming out for Mike Smith as he has struggled, which isn't surprising. Right? He's 40 years old, or I should correct myself because I called him 40 years old a couple months ago, and Jason Gregor on Twitter countered my argument by saying he's not 40. So in 23 days, Mike Smith will be 40 years old. So that's one reason that he's going to struggle. 2, his strong play for the last year and a bit came out of nowhere. And also he just came back from injury. So those are all reasons to feel like Mike Smith is not long for the crease in Edmonton. And the knives coming out, just for context, we saw that clip on TNT, or they were discussing how Mike Smith was ripping his defenseman after giving up goals. And it's starting to be mentioned a little more that he's a negative influence and this sort of domineering personality who's demanding. And then you have Mikko Koskinen coming along and playing pretty well lately, too. He's been bad for so long. And now I'm like, well, could he be good? And the ray of hope for Mikko Koskinen, which impacts Mike Smith's fortunes, because if Mikko Koskinen can't play, then that helps Mike Smith. But there is a little bit of reason to hope that Koskinen can be better because his numbers took a decided dip with Dave Tippett behind the bench. And we saw that tension between Koskinen and Tippett bubble to the surface not long before Tippett was fired. There's been a lot of talk about how there was no system with Tippett, no protection for the goalie. And so now that there is a system, could Koskinen succeed or at least not be terrible? Like, he's never been good, but he could be average. And this year, Koskinen hasn't been far below his expected save percentage on the whole year at 5-on-5. So I think there's room to recover, especially if Mike Smith is not consistently good, which seems to be a strong possibility. And then, of course, you've got Stuart Skinner is the wild card in all this. He's getting games in Bakersfield while head coach Jay Woodcroft figures out what to do with the NHL guys in his crease. And I think they are very much in like an assessment phase, like how far can Mike Smith take us? How far can Mikko Koskinen take us? And at some point, I think they'll answer those questions with a not very far and give Stuart Skinner a shot. But to answer your question, Elon, all this leads me to say, I think it's unlikely you'll feel too bad about dropping Mike Smith. Maybe he bounces back to put up some gems, here and there through the season. But I'm expecting at best that Mike Smith is going to be mixing in some low lows with any high highs he reaches.
Yeah, fair enough. And by the way, another reason to be concerned about any recent starts coming for Edmonton is that they're getting hurt with injuries pretty badly lately. Ryan Nugent Hopkins sustained an upper body injury during Saturday's game. I don't think we have an update yet, but I know he didn't play today. So he joins Puljujarvi, who's on the shelf. We knew he was going to be out for maybe another 3 weeks now. Then it was announced today, right before today's game on Sunday, that Kailer Yamamoto wouldn't play due to an undisclosed injury. So that's 3 significant pieces. And that left the lines for today in this 2-1 loss. McDavid, Hyman, and Fogle. Then Draisaitl with Kane. And then it looks like it swapped. Like it started, Colton Sevier was on that line. And then Tyler Benson. Yet somehow, the only goal scored in this game for Edmonton was scored by Derek Ryan, who scored from his spot in the bottom 6. And that's the second game in a row for Derek Ryan to score, because he scored a hat trick in the game versus Florida in Edmonton's last game. So all of a sudden, Derek Ryan has 4 goals in his last couple of games. No way this is anything, right? Like, I gotta mention him. People are rushing. I see his ad numbers, increasing on Yahoo. He's showing up on that list of most players who have been added the most recently. But come on, he's Derek Ryan. He's in the bottom 6 in Edmonton. So I just wanted to confirm that with you.
Yeah, confirmed. There's not reason to talk much more about this, but it is fun to see someone producing. Remember, you asked me last week if I had to pick someone in the top 6, who would it be? And I was like, well, Warren Fogle, but actually nobody. And along comes Derek Ryan to, I think, basically confirm that my answer last week was a good one.
No, well, the good answer would have been Derek Ryan, and then we could be celebrating right now.
Well, but it's unpredictable. You're right. There was someone, which is surprising.
Okay, so that's Edmonton. We'll see how that all shakes out with the injuries. I guess Ben and Lewis will give us updates on short shifts if we hear more injury news, if RNH or Yamamoto are going to be out long term like Puljujarvi. Okay, let's do one more struggling goalie, and actually it's a tandem here, but over in Minnesota, Cam Talbot, he's still 92% rostered on Yahoo, but he's been a total drag lately. 5-4-4 goals against in his last 3 games versus Winnipeg, Florida, and Ottawa. Meanwhile, Kaapo Kähkönen had a good game versus the Leafs in a 3-1 loss on Thursday, which gave him a second straight start versus Calgary on Saturday, which did not go as well for Kähkönen, who led in 5 goals on 33 shots. So clearly, Cam Talbot will get the next start. I think that's pretty clear to me. But this Minnesota goalie situation seems super murky at this point, going into a 4-game week next week. Say Talbot puts up a 4th straight stinker versus the Flames in a rematch game on Tuesday. Would you consider it being time to consider bailing on him? It just seems like a situation, in Dallas, Holtby was the guy getting a lot of games for a while, then Ettinger, it seems like Ettinger is good, and then now it seems like Ettinger gets almost every game and Holtby barely plays. Is that happening to Talbot, or is this the kind of thing where if you drop Talbot, you're going to really regret it, because he'll go back to doing what he was doing at the start of the year, where he was one of the, maybe not top, but among the top goalies that you wanted to roster in fantasy for a lot of the season?
As we've said, a lot of Talbot's success this year has come because he's well protected, but even though he's well protected doesn't mean he's playing well. Cam Talbot has not been good this season, and actually at this point of the year, I'm getting some real deja vu with him and Kaapo Kähkönen, especially with Kaapo Kähkönen, because last season, Kähkönen was meh to start, then had a sterling run when he had an opportunity, and then an inconsistent follow-up, which is exactly the same pattern we've seen with Kähkönen now. Talbot has been bad. Kähkönen has been subpar, not by much, but similar, in a way similar to Nigelkovic. Actually, if you're going by their expected save percentage numbers, I don't know what to make of this crease. I'm going to be honest. If Minnesota can't solidify their goalie situation with either guy, I do wonder. Like, they should consider themselves cup contenders this year. I wonder if they do some shopping for some outside help. In the meantime, rostering either of these Minnesota goalies can be tough since I don't even know they're going to alternate starts, right? If a team is alternating, you know at least you're going to get every other game. But if you don't know that, they might. I feel like Minnesota is just going to be going with the hot hand, which means you hold a guy who's backing up for 2 or 3 games in the hopes that he can get in and then hold the net once he gets in beyond one start, which neither of these guys has really shown the capacity to go in and in a consistent way do well enough to earn another start. And that just speaks to my lack of faith in both Cam Talbot and Kaapo Kähkönen right now. So my advice is similar to my advice with Jack Campbell, which is that, like, if you have Cam Talbot, you need to have a plan B for your crease in case he's not helpful to you. This is a more dire situation than Jack Campbell. I don't want to equate the two at all, but I'm just saying if you've been someone who has relied on Cam Talbot, well, you've probably already had to reconfigure those plans, but don't expect to go back to relying on Cam Talbot. I think it's going to be a tricky run for each Wild goalie through the rest of the season. It would be great if someone stepped up and took the job. If I had to bet on someone, it would be Kähkönen. But if you're relying on either of these guys, I would evaluate what your team would be like without them. Check your goalie options in free agency, because I think as good as the Wild are and as well as they protect their goalies, neither of these guys is a sure start on any given night.
Man, this has been a really tricky season for goalies. Like, it's just like these goalies, like, you're so good for the first half of the year, you disappear in the second half. And yeah, I have no idea what's going to happen here. I agree with you. Like, you can't rely on either of these Minnesota goalies. I was really surprised to see that Talbot's still rostered in so many leagues. Since we're in Minnesota, let's check in on the Lions. They actually shook things up a bit yesterday versus Calgary. I see Joel Eriksson was back with Kaprizov and Zuccarello for a bit, but I also see Hartman got some time centering that top line. So probably not worth reading too much into it. Like, they lost that game 5-1 versus Calgary. So you could definitely see the coaching staff like going back to the drawing board, and who knows what they're going to do. I'm definitely going to be watching GameDayLineTweets.com to see what Minnesota rolls out for who's going to play with Kaprizov and Zuccarello, whether it's Eriksson or Hartman. Hartman went on a nice little run. Like, he had a cold streak. We brought him up on the show being like, man, it's surprising that he's cold even though he's playing with Zuccarello and Kaprizov. But then like, he went on a bit of a run. He had 4 points in 5 games after that, but now he's pointless in 2 again. If he ends up being bumped to the bottom 6, like, for good, like, I guess I'd have to see it happen for like a few games. But like, if we see that Eriksson is like taking that spot, that would probably be the death knell for me if I had Ryan Hartman. Like, I'm not interested in a bottom 6 Ryan Hartman, no matter how good he was to start the year. There's someone who seems like more interesting in Minnesota than Ryan Hartman right now is Freddie Gaudreau, who's been holding his own. He's been centering the Fiala-Boldy line for a long time now, and like, Fiala and Boldy have been getting all the attention. I feel like every week we or Ben and Lewis or someone is talking about how good either Fiala and or Boldy are. But Freddie Hockey, as Dave from Stream Scheme calls him, Freddie Hockey's goal yesterday brought him to 11 points in his last 13 games. Plus, I took a look on Frozen Tools at the power plays, and it looks like Gaudreau bumped Joel Eriksson from the net front spot on the top power play for at least part of the game. Again, this is a bad loss. Who knows if that's going to last? But imagine if you have Freddie Gaudreau centering Boldy and Fiala and on the top power play. Wow. And Minnesota has a 4-game week next week. So how can you not be interested in streaming in Freddie Gaudreau? Only 3% rostered on Yahoo at the moment. I haven't listened to this week's stream scheme, but I'll be very surprised if he's not someone. I guess the only reason that Dave wouldn't pick him as one of his recommended streams for the week would be because I think he just recommended him really recently and he doesn't like to do doubles, but he's someone who's really on my radar right now.
And on ours too, we brought up Freddie Gaudreau, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago? And I'm not sure if it was on the main show or a patron cast, but he is definitely worth having. That Boldy Fiala line is the same as Kirill Kaprizov's line at this point. Getting the guys playing with any of those guys should be something you try to capitalize on. So if Gaudreau is out there, I don't know what you're waiting for. Minnesota does have a lot of these 4-game weeks, which, going back to the goalies, a week ago, you might have said, well, I'm at least going to get 2 starts out of whichever Minnesota goalie I have. And what I was saying in that whole series before is that I just don't even know that that's true. I feel like some weeks you could see 1 start, some weeks you could see 3, and it's not worth holding while within all that uncertainty. But if you're looking for certainty, I think Freddie Gaudreau is a lot better player to roster than any of the Minnesota goalies.
Right, I guess depending on your format. But yeah, definitely a great spot right now, especially if he gets that top power play. So something definitely to watch. Brian, I've got some more interesting line combination changes I want to throw at you and get your take on. And we're going to get to those in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson.
Are we
Okay.
doing HelloFresh? Oh,
no,
sorry.
we're not doing anything.
Oh, no HelloFresh?
No.
I finally got my box. I was ready to talk about it.
Second box or first box?
I think it's my first, but it didn't come on the date I expected, so.
I asked the Blue Wire guys if I'm getting a second box, and they said yes, but nothing came. So I didn't order anything. Last week I didn't get anything.
That's tough. You're gonna have to spend more than 30 minutes at the grocery store this week.
Yeah. Well, I went to a party yesterday in Mississauga, which was like a real annoying thing to get to. I had to take like a GO train and then get picked up. But the one benefit was we took home a lot of leftovers from that party, Egyptian food. So I've got that to cover me.
Wow.
Wow, I know. I'm actually going to eat some right after the show.
Party. I'm more jealous that you came home with leftovers.
Okay, so let's do this. Line combos. All right, we are back, Brian. And like I said, we were just talking about Minnesota shaking up their top line. Let's talk about another team who's shaken up their top line recently in Boston. Jake DeBrusk seems to have taken over for Craig Smith on that top line with Bergeron and Marchand. And DeBrusk has been capitalizing. He's on a nice run at the moment. He scored in 3 straight games versus Ottawa, Colorado, and Seattle. It was 2 goals actually versus Seattle. And then in his most recent game, he picked up an assist on Saturday versus Reimer and the Sharks. Brian, I know that DeBrusk has gotten some decent deployment like in the past. We've talked about him like feels like for years. Like he was on the top power play in Boston, seemed like someone worth streaming in every once in a while, and he never really did anything. And I feel like at some point we just decided that we're over him no matter where he plays. But right now he's producing. He's on the top line. Apparently the word is that he's asked to be traded. So maybe this is some sort of like situation where Boston's just trying to give him a good, spot so that they get a good offer. I don't know. Whatever it is, Boston's got a very nice schedule next week. They play Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So kind of like Gaudreau. It's like, why not, if you have room, like stream in DeBrusk at least for Monday, Tuesday. See if you can keep this up. You could always drop him after that. What do you think?
Sorry.
What happened?
Sorry, I got caught up in something else. What do I think about picking him up and dropping DeBrusk? Okay.
No, I'm not dropping DeBrusk. I said, why not pick up DeBrusk, who plays Monday, Tuesday, see how he does.
Oh, and then consider dropping him.
Well, right? Yeah, just like
that was the implication.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the important thing to consider here, this seems to me, Jake DeBrusk on the top line. I know there's an opportunity here, but I think this is a classic showcase situation for Jake DeBrusk. He's asked for a trade. We know Boston has wanted to move on at times too. Seems like a good time to start dangling him towards the deadline. And DeBrusk just came off playing a season high 18 minutes and 46 seconds in the Boston game against Seattle. And to his credit, DeBrusk is doing his part to impress other teams. 4 goals on 11 shots in 3 games before having his goal scoring streak snapped on Saturday in San Jose. Of course, 4 goals and 11 shots is not sustainable, but for Monday, Tuesday, Jake DeBrusk is definitely interesting to some extent, really to the same extent that Craig Smith and Eric Haula were when Boston first moved David Pastrnak to the second line. But remember that Smith and Haula have since fizzled, and DeBrusk has also never consistently made use of deployment in past opportunities. So I'd be careful about the acquisition cost here. Like I wouldn't drop someone who's good to get an extra game out of Jake DeBrusk just because he's playing on the first line. But if you can get him at little or no cost to you, you can grab DeBrusk for the short term. But keep in mind, it's still very safe to assume. Sorry. Gotta turn this to do not disturb. It's pretty safe to assume, or at least there's a pretty good chance that Jake DeBrusk is going to potentially be worthless to you by the time this week is over and possibly sooner. So just don't get too hyped about DeBrusk. Give him a couple games and see what he does. And hey, he might reward you, but his production so far hasn't been sustainable. And I think this is just a chance to really show him doing stuff so Boston can try and maximize their return in an eventual trade.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So any game now, we can see the lines changing and his value goes from high to absolutely nothing. There's one other team I see that plays Monday, Tuesday next week, and that's New Jersey. And, we've been talking a lot about the Devils recently with all of their outjuries. I see that in some leagues that I'm in, like a Mercer or a Zaka is available. I think a Sharangovich is available still to some people, which surprises me. Would you take all those Devils over DeBrusk for a Monday, Tuesday stream if you're looking for some short-term help?
I would definitely take Sharangovich over him. Then I might put DeBrusk in the same sort of category as Mercer and Zaka. I might even lean DeBrusk just a little bit. I think he is motivated to play his way out of Boston and to get other teams interested. So I think that's a good category of players to put him into, just decidedly below Sharangovich.
Okay, I've got a hunch. Just going to throw it out there. I think Mercer is going to give you a big week next week. He's playing with Jack Hughes now, and Sharangovich, by the way. I don't know. Just a hunch, okay? So we'll see what happens. But these are things are obviously just sometimes you just have to go with your gut a little bit for these lower level players. And by the way, when I call Mercer a lower level player, I mean for this year, not for the future. He's going to be a really big player in the league, I think. Okay, over on Florida, they've been shifting up the lines a little bit. Over in Florida, they've been shifting up the lines a little bit. Frank Vetrano got a shot with Barkov and Verhaeghe in one game, but in their most recent game on Saturday, it was Mason Marchment playing on the top line with Barkov and Verhaeghe, and that loss to Edmonton didn't go so well. The line didn't score, so I don't know, maybe that's not going to last. Obviously an interesting name already. That's even more interesting if he sticks on the top line, but also, I just don't want to encourage people to actually think this means anything. I think that Florida is playing around with things, and I could imagine a lot of different combinations that they might go with in their two games next week. So, I don't know. I won't even ask you about Marchman. We know that he's had some amazing games and also some quiet games. Have we mentioned on the podcast that Anthony Duclair has been playing on the top power play for the last few weeks? I'm not sure if we did. I know we talked about Sam Bennett, going on a bit of a cold streak, and he was off the top power play. But yeah, it's Duclair there, and he had 2 power plays this yesterday, bringing him to 5 points in his last 5 games. What a season Anthony Duclair is having. He's on a 73-point pace. He's playing with Huberdeau and Bennett on, I guess, the second line or in the top 6. It's almost like at this point you can't really call a line that has Huberdeau the second line. But also, yeah, top power play. What a spot for Duclair, and he's really producing. Unfortunately, someone that's also in a good spot on Florida, and he's been there for a while, but seems to be taking a step back, is Carter Verhaeghe. He hasn't been seeing time on either power play unit recently, not on the first or second power play. He still plays with Barkov at even strength, but that's only been good for 3 points in Verhaeghe's last 7 games. Brian, should we be concerned that Verhaeghe won't be able to keep up the near 70-point pace he was on for like all of last year and most of this season before this recent stretch? Because Florida plays only Thursday, Saturday this week. A lot of people, I'm sure, need to clear up roster space and are wondering if now's the time to cut bait on Verhaeghe. I'm curious to hear what you think about that.
He's definitely been a very tough guy to roster. Carter Verhaeghe, when he's good, and he's been good a lot over the last year and a half. But going cold lately, you look at this guy on your roster and like, why am I so attached to Carter Verhaeghe? Is it time to drop him? And I'm in the same place as you, Elam, where I'm considering it. I've twice played him this past week ahead of Mikael Granlund, who decided to start putting up points again himself. So I'm at this crossroads where I'm like, okay, Verhaeghe might have lost me the week actually for my trust in him to outpoint Mikael Granlund for my Cupful team. So yeah, let's dig in and see why. The first thing I'm seeing is that Verhaeghe was on the ice, or has been on the ice for just 8 goals in his last 13 games, which is a lot less than he's been used. Like, he's generally been on the ice at 5-on-5 for a goal a game for most of the season. So 8 goals in 13 games, that's low. And then I'm trying to figure out why. And I'm looking at those 13 games. Florida is shooting less than 4% with Verhaeghe on the ice. And you compare that with the 9% that we expect Florida to shoot. And you compare that with the 9% that we expect Florida to shoot with Verhaeghe on the ice based on his numbers last year and this year. And I think that's it. I think there's just some bad shooting luck happening because Verhaeghe's on-ice expected goals rates are as high as ever. So I think he's just getting the raw deal here. And it's hard to hold on to Verhaeghe while this happens. But I think that's what you need to do. And I'm glad you asked, Elon, because I needed to do this research for my own purposes as I figure out my next moves. And after doing it, I might even suggest that now is a good time to buy him. I wouldn't be surprised if there are some impatient Verhaeghe managers letting go. It would be a mistake to let go of Carter Verhaeghe right now. I think he's probably going to continue being as good the rest of the way as he has been for most of the last year and a half while playing with Alex Barkov. So that would be a reason to look in to see whether Carter Verhaeghe is available in your league if you don't have him. And if you do, hold strong. Even though he only plays twice this week, I know it's going to be hard, but I think he's going to make it worth your while.
Okay, here's the move if you don't have him. Add Jake DeBrusk, okay? Then right away, send an offer for Carter Verhaeghe, be like he's playing on the top line, look at all these goals he's scoring. Then most leagues, it takes like a couple days, for the trade to process. So you still get the Monday, Tuesday games from DeBrusk, and then it swaps over and you get Verhaeghe for Thursday, Saturday. You still get 4 games in the week. So I don't know if you could actually pull that off. That's a thought I had. Now's a good time to trade for him because then you could still get the games out of the player that you trade while you wait for the trade to process. Okay, so Brian, speaking of the unfortunate drops I made, I told you earlier on about some of them, and I have already kind of hinted at how I dropped Cam Atkinson in the cupful, which is, I know some listeners listening to this might be like, what? You loved Cam Atkinson. You were bugging Brian every week about Cam Atkinson. Look how good he's still doing. Why don't you believe in him as much as I do? But you know me, Brian, my Achilles heel, when I see just like 1 and 2 shot games, game after game, I'm like, well, why do I have this guy then? And like Philly wasn't scoring many goals, so I finally decided I had to cut bait on someone. I held Verhaeghe just like you, and I dropped Cam Atkinson. So of course he had a 1 goal and 1 assist game on Saturday. So that was a bummer, but he only still had 2 shots on goal. So he was kind of still doing the same thing. He just got lucky. Well, I don't want to say he got lucky, right? But obviously something's going to go in for a player every once in a while. But he is on the top line and he is on the top power play. So maybe it was a bit rash. Ben picked him up. So I wish him all the best. Of course, I love Ben. But anyways, this is still something to talk about in this line combo section because there is a new player on this top line in Philly, and that's Joel Farabee, who returned from his upper body injury on Saturday and jumped right to that line with Giroux and Atkinson, and also to the top power play. Farabee assisted on Atkinson's goal on Saturday, so I guess I've got a 2-part question for you going into a 4-game week for Philly. Number 1, did I blow it dropping Cam Atkinson, or is this just a typical post-drop bump? And then also for people in leagues where Cam Atkinson is not available, but Joel Farabee is, how appealing is he to you right now if he's sitting in your free agency and he's getting this deployment?
I don't think you blew it by dropping Cam Atkinson. Though keep in mind that all of Philly has struggled in the time that Atkinson's shots have gone away, but he was also still putting up shots even when Philly was struggling earlier because the Flyers have really been struggling all season long. Anyway, I think it's fine that you dropped Cam Atkinson and just watch his shots. There's been rumors he's been playing injured, which tracks with him putting up fewer shots on goal. And if those don't return, then I don't expect the points to keep coming the way they were. I was impressed, though. Atkinson was keeping up high shot counts for a longer stretch than he has in a long time. So way to go, Cam Atkinson. It was a good run. If you're injured, why don't you take some time off, get fully healthy so you can come back and start shooting and putting up points again the way you were before? Because I'm open to the idea, but it doesn't look like that's what's about to happen now until we see those shot rates reverse. As for Joel Farabee, he's definitely appealing as a free agent option if he's out there. He's 22 years old. He's a developing player. He's shown some promise already. I wouldn't say Farabee is much more beyond a speculative stream for now, but if you've got room on your roster or need to try and find a gem in a free agent pool that's grown stagnant, which often happens at this point of the season, then Farabee coming off IR and suddenly being in that player pool is a pretty decent choice. And it's nice to see that he played 21 minutes in his return to the lineup too, which suggests to me that he is ready to go. And I think Philadelphia is going to want to give Farabee opportunities the rest of the year to see whether he's a top 6 guy or a mid 6 guy for them next year. But same caveat is what I sort of mentioned about Cam Atkinson, which is that Philly is also really, really struggling. They have just not been that good this year, which makes it harder for their players to produce, especially if, say, Claude Giroux is on his way out the door. So, which could open up a different kind of opportunity for Farabee, actually. In the meantime, keep an eye on him at the very least. He should be on your watch list. And like I said, if you're looking for a fresh injection to your lineup and the usual waiver wire guys are boring to you and have low upside, then Joel Farabee is a pretty nice option to have as he comes off the injured reserve.
Just 1 second. I think I might have to correct something I said, but well said, Brian. I'm just looking at the schedule now. I said it was a 4-game week, but now I'm not sure if that was correct. Wait, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Oh yeah, why did I think that? Okay. All right, yeah, Farabee definitely someone to have at the top of your watch list if you don't want to, take the plunge right away. But he's definitely someone I'm interested in as well. I don't know why I thought, by the way, that Philly has a 4-game week next week. They don't. They only play Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, so a little less appealing compared to Freddie Gaudreau, who I have confirmed. Minnesota, I was correct, does play 4 times next week on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. So that's a nice schedule, including a couple off-day games. Let's go to Winnipeg now for another interesting line combination. Let's talk about the other Svechnikov, Evgeny Zvechnikov. No one ever talks about this guy, but he's recently found himself in a really sweet spot on line 1 or line 2. I don't know what you'll call it, but like the line with Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois, which is a pretty sweet place to be. Svechnikov is taking advantage recently. He scored a goal versus Colorado on Friday, had another goal and an assist versus Arizona today. People may not remember this, but Svechnikov was once a decently high-endish prospect. Like, he was taken 19th overall in 2015 by the Wings, never panned out to be anything more than a bottom sixer until now, where he's getting a shot in the top 6. And, so far so good. And like, I don't even really know what to say. Like, I don't think you're going to tell me no, actually Evgeny Svechnikov is amazing. And I'm not surprised about this at all. I think it's just that Kyle Connor is so good. Another couple goals today. And Pierre-Luc Dubois is really good in his own right. The Jets won 5-3 today on the back of a couple Connor goals in the third. And so, yeah, Svechnikov got in on one of those. He also scored one himself. So if you're in a deep league, I think you want the third wheel on that line, right? Kind of like similar to a Freddie Gaudreau situation. Of course, Gaudreau, I mentioned, is getting potentially power play opportunities. So Svechnikov's not getting that. And also Gaudreau, we've seen produce for a while now. So obviously I'm not saying that Svechnikov is at that level yet. But depending how deep your league is, I think you got to at least start watch listing Evgeny Svechnikov for as long as he's going to be playing with Connor and Dubois.
I think so too. Dubois and Kyle Connor seem to be connected. They've been together most of the season. The third piece on that line with them earlier in the year was Wheeler before he got hurt, and then Evgeny Svechnikov for a little bit, then Cole Perfetti, who's now injured and doesn't seem to have a timeline to return. So yeah, with Wheeler rolling on Scheifele's line, Svechnikov is a pretty good shot to take here. Someone who's going to stick on a line that is pretty productive and has one of the best goal scorers in the league, Kyle Connor, on it. And Evgeny Zvechnikov, it wouldn't be the first time he saw some success there. He saw earlier in the season when he had some turns with Dubois and Connor, he had a few points in that little run too. Former Detroit Red Wing prospect. Svechnikov's now 25 years old and I think has loads of skill. He's just not always able to earn or hold or get opportunities to show it. And I think that makes him not at all a bad third wheel to have up in that top 6 in Winnipeg now, especially when the Jets have good playoff schedules in lots of formats. So if it's time for you to start thinking about your playoff schedules, take a look at the Jets. They have a lot of off-night games in playoff weeks. And Svechnikov, if he's still up in that spot at that time, could be a pretty useful depth scoring piece for you. So I really like you bringing him up, Elon. And I think everyone should go at least take a look at Evgeny Svechnikov.
Yeah, of course, keep in mind, like DeBrusk, the lines could change and then he'll be useless, right? So he's not someone to give up anything huge for, but it's a good spot right now for however long he holds. And like you said, Brian, it's he's had it for a little while and all the people who potentially could have stolen it from him are either injured or rolling on another line. Exactly.
And I look up and down the lineup and I don't see too many candidates to take the spot from him, with Wheeler entrenched on another line and Perfetti out of the lineup. So I feel like when Perfetti's healthy again, then maybe you look again. But in the meantime, with the way Svechnikov is rolling, you add him now if you've got space and then see how long he lasts up there. The downside is he still, even on that line, is playing third to fourth line minutes. He's barely playing, but it's still a good guy to have if you're in a deep league and looking for some help.
Yeah, by the way, Brian, I got to mention since we're on Winnipeg, Neil Pionk, who I've brought up every week, you've held on this whole time, and he's starting to reward you. He had an assist today. That's his 4th assist in 4 games this week. Not a bad week at all. Just wanted to bring him up and say congratulate you on getting some points out of Neil Pionk finally.
Thanks. It's been nice. It would have been even nicer if Pionk hadn't disappeared completely in the first place, but it is nice to see Neil Pionk hitting the score sheet again and rewarding our very, very immense patience with him.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to keep putting up points, but nice to see. Okay, so let's go to some injuries now, and then we'll end the show with some hot and cold streaks. I still have a lot of players I want to ask you about, Brian, so let's get into it. Over in Vegas, Max Pacioretty injured again in Friday's game versus Arizona, didn't play on Saturday. just a rough year health-wise for Pacioretty. Like when he plays, well, he started the year so well, then he got hurt. When he came back, he wasn't even looking that good. Then things were finally looking up with him playing with Eichel. So hopefully this isn't a long-term thing. I don't think we've heard anything yet. So in this game on Saturday, Eichel played with Dadonov and Stevenson versus the Avs, and Stevenson actually opened the scoring in the first. So, and by the way, Stevenson and Dadonov also joined Eichel on the top power play, along with Keegan Colasar as the other forward on that unit, which is not something I expected to see. So I don't really know what to make of any of this, and maybe the lines will get shuffled around since they did lose that game. Though it was against Colorado, so they put up a good fight. I'm like over Dadonov. Like I don't care. You could tell me Dadonov's playing with Eichel and like Pacioretty or whoever and on the top power play. I feel like I still wouldn't recommend him. I am into Stevenson though. Like that's a really good spot for him, and he's someone who we haven't seen totally disappear all season. I don't think I'm going to recommend Keegan Colasar to anyone, but yeah, just wanted to give this update. Really, though, I just hope that Pacioretty's okay.
That's the bottom line, because I don't think anyone is going to get Pacioretty-like production who's not Max Pacioretty. Colasar, if he's not scoring for you, then he does average a few hits per game, although those have dipped over the last couple outings, and I'm not sure if that has to do with any kind of role change or things being asked of him, so something to watch. But aside from hitting, there's not much else you can depend on Keegan Colasar to do. I think he's probably just getting a look on the top unit and could see him off it again at any point. So don't get too heavily invested in the guy. But if your league rewards hits and you want to take a shot and you know he's going to be on the top power play, then you could try him. But that top power play looks not too impressive right now, sadly.
Yeah, I wonder if it's almost like maybe in that one game, maybe just that power play got more ice time for whatever reason, but really the one with Marchessault, Riley Smith, and Karlsson is like, well, we'll have to get more data and see like what lines they roll there. But I know Eichel's there, which makes it seem like a top power play, but Stevenson, Dadonov, and Colasar don't make it look like a top power play, of course. Okay, so the next injury I wanted to bring up is Matt Barzell, who's day-to-day with a lower body injury. He got injured in Saturday's game against LA. The Islanders are playing again tonight as we speak. And so far, yeah, and Barzell didn't play today. I could bring up the lines here. It looks like Anders Lee is playing with Brock Nelson and Beauvillier, and then Kyle Palmieri is playing with Zach Parise and JG Pajot. And then like we have the bottom six there, top power play, Pajot, Lee, Nelson, Beauvillier, and Noah Dobson. I don't know. Islanders are always just so tough to talk about. Like, I don't know who to recommend or what to say here. Barzell's injured. That can't really be good for anyone. I guess Pajot getting on the top power play is good. And maybe now he's instead of a, third line center, he's a second line center. Maybe we'll see some more ice time, but he's not someone that, anyways, yeah. I don't know. Islanders. There you go. Barzell's injured. That stinks. By the way, Brian, one guy on this team that doesn't stink and is definitely always worth discussing lately is Noah Dobson. Like, I recall we brought him up when he had this hot run right before the Islanders stopped playing for a couple of weeks, and we were sort of discussing whether or not he's worth holding even with a bad schedule. If I recall, you were not fully sold on the guy. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are now on Noah Dobson. He's been so amazing recently. 7 points in his last 7 games going into today, and I see he has scored a goal today against Anthony Stolarz of the Ducks. So that's now 8 points in 8 games. He's taking a lot of shots. He had 4 and 5 shots in each of his last couple of games versus LA and San Jose. He's the clear top power play guy with no competition. Maybe we thought that when Ryan Pulock came back, he might, challenge for power play time. It seems like Dobson is the guy. He's the guy they drafted and hoped he would be. And at least from the score sheet, it's looking like Dobson is for real. And he's still only 46% rostered, which is kind of crazy to me. So I'm curious to know if you agree with me that it's crazy that he's only 46% rostered and he's for real and worth holding and being excited about for the rest of the season.
I think it's reasonable that he's only 46% rostered. He's not that valuable in a lot of leagues because he doesn't do a whole lot. Like a 45 point pace is yeah, that's good, but you'd like that to be accompanied by more hits, shots, or blocks than he puts up on a regular basis. And on the power play, he's had that role all season long. 8 power play points in 47 games is not that exciting. And that's why I've been down on Dobson. The last time he had a hot run, you were like, how could you not be into him? And I was like, I'm just not into him. It's someone I can reliably count on. And sure enough, he did fall off. And if I recall correctly, Elon, you were like, yeah, I guess you were right to not want to. I think we were talking about when the Isles had bad schedules, whether you wanted to hold on to Dobson. And I said he was not a must hold. It's great that over this run where Dobson now has 12 points in parts of 15 games, he has nearly 3 shots per game. That's really impressive. And that's the reason to want him. I'd want him above Philip Ronick, but not above Severson or Sergachev, who I'd rather have.
What? I
Yeah.
disagree. I would take Dobson over Severson or Sergachev for sure.
I feel like you've had your like ups and downs about Dobson over the year. And I feel
Hmm.
like in the downs you would definitely agree with me, and in the ups you wouldn't. Like I feel like there's like a heavy recency bias coming into play. His shots have been fantastic lately though, which I want to give him full credit for. He's just not someone who seems to have a whole lot of upside.
I guess like for me, it's like a top power play guy who's shooting a lot. Like I'll just take it. And like if Barzell's injured for a long time, maybe that's gonna hurt. But it didn't hurt today when he scored a goal. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I would like. I don't think you set the bar too high with Severson and Sergachev. So I'm gonna take Dobson over those like lower upside guys. In my
sure.
opinion.
Yeah, I mean he has 9 goals on 120 shots. So that's he's probably shooting. Like he probably has 3 or 4 more goals than he should based on his career numbers too. So look, I'm happy he's doing well, but I'm still not convinced that the Isles power play 1 quarterback is worth rostering.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. But I know you must be excited to see your Bay, Zach Parise, who you've loved forever. He's on a hot streak right now. I didn't think I'd see it ever again in my life, but he had 6 points in his previous 4 games going into today. He did not assist on Dobson's goal, but we're only through 1 period so far. Is there any chance that this is somewhat for real and Zach Parise is actually someone we're going to say on a 2022 episode of Keeping Karlsson that people should consider adding to their fantasy teams?
No, I mean, you said it going into this Isles talk. It's like, oh, the Islanders, like, there's only so much you can really say. No one's really exciting. And by the way, I said, like, Dobson is not rosterable. I'm going to walk that back a bit. He is rosterable. He's worth holding, especially while he's doing well. But he's like, similar to Ronick, he's not somebody I'd want to hold at all costs, but I'd want to hold him longer than I'd hold Ronick. So just to make that clear, Dobson is a nice option, but the upside and ceiling is pretty low to me. Parise, yeah, I don't know where this is coming from. The Islanders are partying like it's 2019, getting contributions from a 37-year-old Zach Parise. Also, Kyle Palmieri, we featured last week, is going on a little run with the Isles. Parise scored 3 goals on 7 shots, still limited time on ice. So I'm not going to get too attached to what Parise's doing, but thank you for at least mentioning that he's seeing some success.
Okay, who has a better chance of keeping their streak up? Zach Parise or the fake Sebastian Aho, who has 5 assists in his last 6 games going into today? Can't believe it.
I can't believe that either. S3B Aho, as he's known on some stat sites that have to differentiate Sebastian Aho, Carolina, from Sebastian Aho on Long Island. Like this is the reason, honestly, that I'm not into Noah Dobson. Like this can happen, right? This is a good illustration. Aho has 5 assists in his last 6 games, but where is this coming from? I don't think there's any sign it's going to last. It's nice that he's done something, but just 4 shots over that stretch, no Paris to speak of, still playing middling minutes for the most part. You know, you just you don't see guys lucking into points too often in Long Island. Usually they're lucking out of them. Now we have Palmieri, Parise, Aho. Neither run inspires confidence. But Dobson, yeah, he's rosterable again, but as before, he's not a slam dunk to be relevant all season long. Can we move on from the Islanders now? There's such a, and I'm personally frustrated with them because I have their tandem. I had their tandem in 2 leagues this year for the first time. That it hasn't been worth having their tandem in the last several years.
How do you still have Varlamov? Hasn't he only played like 1 time in the last 6 games?
Varlamov's got to go.
Okay. Let him go. Sorokin doing good so far today through 1 period, like I've said. Okay. Speaking of D available everywhere, so I brought up the fake Sebastian Aho, so I might as well just mention this. And this is, I'm telling you right now, this isn't relevant. So you can skip ahead 2 minutes if you're like in a rush. But the Sharks, Mario Ferraro is injured and he just had surgery, so he's going to be out for a while. And Erik Karlsson apparently won't be back. Might be back next weekend, which is good, but it's still maybe you have a game or 2 where you might be able to get in on Ryan Merkley, who's been getting some second power play deployment, or at least he did in that game on Saturday in Ferraro's stead. I just want to bring up Ryan Merkley because I know that our friend Victor Nuno from the Fantasy Hockey Life podcast like loves Ryan Merkley, and at one point I like reached out to him for a trade in our Dynasty League, and he was like, "There's no way I'm giving you Merkley." So I just wanted to like bring him up. He got an assist a couple games ago. He had 3 shots in the 3-1 loss yesterday, where he got that increased role. So just want to throw his name out, but I can't imagine, Brian, you're going to be telling people to rush to grab Ryan Merkley this year, maybe in the future one day.
I did do my homework to just make sure that your guess on my take was correct, and it is correct. By the way, Ryan Merkley, not to be confused with another Sharks prospect, Nick Merkley, with whom there's no apparent relation. If you want to know more about Ryan, 21 years old, 21st overall pick in 2018 of the San Jose Sharks. In 56 AHL games over the last couple seasons, Ryan Merkley has 28 points in 56 games, which isn't bad, including 17 points in his last 25 AHL games this year. So way to go, Ryan Merkley, for some AHL success. Also had success in the Ontario Hockey League in junior. He's a point per game defenseman. So he does have a bit of an offensive pedigree coming with him, but I'm not sure he's ready for the heavy minutes that Ferraro plays or that he'd be able to do much with them. Ryan Merkley seems to me like the kind of guy that will get maybe brought along and see more of a role once Brent Burns is ready to relinquish what he does offensively. But in the meantime, I'm not recommending you rush out and go get Ryan Merkley.
All right, so let's end the show here with some streaky players and teams, hot and cold. And I want to start with a hot team in the Montreal Canadiens. I can't believe this is happening. They've won 5 in a row now after the 2-1 win over the Sens on Saturday. Here's my question. Number 1, is this team actually like really good now? Are we like looking at a good team? And number 2, like if that is the case, then do we need to start buying in on one of their goalies? Like last week we talked about Andrew Hammond's big win over the Isles, and I predicted, and I was incorrect, I thought he'd be the starter moving forward, because I was like, well, obviously Sam Montembeault's not going to be the starter, so if Hammond had a good game, then yeah, maybe he can like run with this and be like a starter on a team that's doing well. Then all of a sudden Montembeault, he had a big start against the Leafs to start last week, 5-2 win, and then he shut out the Sabres, so he got 2 starts in a row. Then Hammond played the Sens on Saturday. He had a good game himself, letting in only a single goal in that win over the Sens. So I don't know, just from looking at the fact that Montembeault got 2 of the 3 games last week, kind of makes it look like he's the starter, or maybe they're just going to go back and forth. I don't know what the plan is. Montreal plays Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday next week. It's a Western Canada road trip. Right? Any prediction on who gets those games? But I guess it only matters if you tell me that it's actually worth having a Montreal Canadiens goalie. They've both been doing really well lately, and by lately I mean the last 5 games.
And that's about as long as we've seen any Habs goalie maintain fantasy relevance too, so I wouldn't get too excited. But I don't know. Hammond's the one who hasn't let anyone down yet. Maybe that's just because he hasn't played enough games to do it. But Montembeault...
Yeah, he's played only twice.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like Montembeault, we know. It's like, yeah, he might have 1 or 2 strong games, and then he'll collapse, and you just have to wait for him to get back up. Hammond, we haven't seen enough from yet. So I don't know how they're going to split games going forward. But I do know that if there is a Montreal starter, I'm a little more interested in Hammond than Montembeault, but again, that might only be because Hammond has not had the chance to blow it the same way Montembeault has. You also know I'm a big Andrew Hammond fan.
Sure. Oh yeah, Zach Parise, Andrew Hammond, Ales Hemsky are like your big 3, right?
This is why I'm struggling to qualify for the Tier 2 Cupful playoffs.
Okay, so let's move on now to a former Hab in Phil Deneau on LA. Just keeps on producing. He has 7 points in his last 7 games after his goal versus the Islanders on Saturday. He's still only 21% rostered on Yahoo, but this line with Deneau, Arvidsson, and Trevor Moore is just really cooking. And, we've talked about Moore a lot, and I feel like Phil Deneau is someone who we've brought up, and I've seen him in free agency in a bunch of my leagues as early as like this past week. Like I could have added him before a pretty decent schedule to end the week. I passed, and he was great. I should have added him for sure. I added like Phil Kessel in the cupful, and he did nothing. He stunk. I should have added Phil Deneau for sure, but I blew it. And like, is this for real though? Is like Phil Deneau really like this guy who's going to be scoring all these goals? Like he's all of a sudden a goal. He was never like this in Montreal. No. He was just like a kind of a solid guy that got some points, but was never on a run like this from what I recall.
Yeah, it was like a Mikael Backlund who would sometimes produce for you and sometimes wouldn't do anything. And like just like a decent 50-point option to stream in. And then he fell off from even being that. But in LA, Deneau's line keeps rolling. And as much as I expect Phil Deneau's production to slow down, he's now pointed in 6 of his last 7 with 5 goals and 2 assists in that stretch. Now, 5 goals have been scored on 19 shots. That won't sustain. But, I like me some Trevor Moore, who himself has 5 points in his last 4 games. So how could I also not endorse Deneau? I think his upside and ceiling is still very limited, but he's on a roll. LA had a good schedule this week. If the schedule works for you in the future and you're looking to stream, I would take a look at Deneau. There seems to be a little more, I don't know. We had to talk on our Discord server not long ago. I think our patron who goes by the name on Discord, I'm sorry, I don't have his real name in front of me, but Breeze, was asking, is there any research that shows that a hot hand is actually a thing? Like if you score a goal one game, does it make you any more likely to produce a goal the next game? Like is being hot a real thing? And after a bit of research from that they shared and that I did too, and I think someone else also jumped in, the answer was no. Like there is no predictive, like scoring a goal in an NHL game is not predictive of whether you'll score a goal in the next NHL game. But it is hard to look away from Phil Deneau, who is continuing to produce on the second line in LA with like one of the reasons I like him is he's playing with some decent guys. Trevor Moore, I expressed my like for a couple weeks ago, and Victor Arvidsson is just shooting all the time. So I think Deneau is not somebody who's a mainstay on your roster, but I think he's a solid stream on nights when you can fit him into your lineup.
Yeah, and I think there are some like caveats with research like this, right? Because a goal by one player is not the same as a goal by, like the fact that Sebastian Aho, the defenseman on the Islanders, had like 4 games in a row with an assist. I don't think that meant that he was more likely to get an assist in his next game. But like Phil Deneau is on the second line. He's getting good deployment on a line that's being expected to score goals. The fact that he's like doing well is like, I think a lot of it, like for sure, maybe there's some like luck or whatever. Like he just happened to like have more shots go in than you'd expect normally to go in. But it's also that he's on a scoring line, that their job is to score goals. And so you'd expect some more goals to go in. So yeah, there's a lot to research like that. I think that research, if I recall, like, sometimes it's talking about like basketball players where like, you've hit like a certain number of jump shots in a row. And are you more likely to hit the next one? And, something like that, it's like the same player taking the same shot. So it's harder when it's like, with the hockey players having a good game, there's so much that goes into the reasons why. And that's I guess a big reason for the podcast, right? We talk about these players on hot streaks and cold streaks, and we try to break down if it's sustainable or fleeting. And, we try our best. I don't know, to figure it out. But very interesting discussion topic. And we could probably do a whole podcast about what it means for a player to be hot. But let's keep it going anyway with some hot players in St. Louis. Well, Jordan Binnington just shut out Chicago today. He stopped 30. So that's 2 big starts in a row for Jordan Binnington. I had him in both of my Series 1-year leagues this year. One of the leagues I drafted him. I had him in both of my Series 1-year leagues this year. One of them I drafted him in. The other one, the couple, I added him for a game against New Jersey where he stunk, and I quickly dropped him. And that turned out to be his last bad game because Ben's getting a lot of call-outs here about good free agent pickups. But yeah, Ben grabbed Binnington, and he's just gotten 2 amazing starts. Ville Husso, by the way, he had a good game versus Buffalo on Friday, so seems like it's starting to look like maybe a timeshare, but my guess would be, like I said with Lewis on Thursday, I think that Coach Berube likes Binnington better, and I think that the plan maybe will be to give Husso a decent number of games, but still for Binnington to be the starter come playoff time. So, Brian, is it like too early at this point to drop Husso in a league? Like obviously in some leagues, Husso's still valuable because he's been playing so well. Like whenever he plays, he's going to give you a good start. But let's say you're in a league where someone like Pavel Francouz is available, like another goalie who's like good. When he plays, it's going to be a quality start, but you can't expect him to get more than 50% of the games. If you're in a league where Francouz is available and he's not generally added unless it's like for a stream and then he gets dropped afterwards, can you drop Husso, or do you have to hold on because it's only 2 good games from Binnington and he had so many bad games before that?
I think it's the second one. It's only a couple good games from Binnington. And since February, 12th, I'm looking at the game logs here. Husso started 4 in a row, actually did pretty well in those starts. Then Binnington had a great start. Then Husso came in, had a great start and a win. Then Binnington took the net again, had a great start and a win against Chicago, for what it's worth. So I don't think Binnington is ripping this job out of Husso's hands because Husso has to concede something, although we have definitely heard Craig Berube through the season seem to express a preference that Jordan Binnington is his guy. But I think it would be premature to just unceremoniously dump Husso because Binnington has had a good couple games.
So you'd keep Husso like above like a Pavel Francouz at this point if you were ranking goalies?
Yeah, I would, because I think Husso has a better chance of starting more games the rest of the season than Francouz does in Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. Like next week, St. Louis goes Wednesday and then Saturday, Sunday. So it's definitely possible that Husso doesn't play for you again until the weekend, and that'll be only one game. So I guess, but again, like Binnington could struggle and he could end up being a starter on a great team. So another tricky goalie situation, like all the ones we talked about earlier on. I just feel like Berube loves Binnington so much. So now that Binnington's actually showing that he still has it in him to have good games, I'd worry that Husso, like no matter how well he plays, it's just like it's not your job, Husso. Like we don't care how well you play. We want Binnington to be our goalie. That's what it seems like to me. But also, I agree with you that maybe it would be a little bit too premature. Hopefully, this next week isn't going to kill you to just have one game out of Husso. By the way, it also seems like David Perron has bounced back from whatever was wrong with him in January. His 2 goals today against Chicago were his 4th and 5th points over his last 4 games. He also took 8 shots today, which is amazing. Kind of seems like this whole Blues top 9 will just run hot and cold throughout the season. Like, we talked about Perron on a cold streak. I believe you said you expect that he's still probably got it in him to go hot again at some point. Now he has. Maybe he'll go cold again. Like on the flip side, Ryan O'Reilly continues to be super meh. He went pointless with only 1 shot today. He only has 4 points in his last 12 games now. So is Ryan O'Reilly now in a David Perron-esque situation from before, where since he's so cold, that just means he's likely going to have some big games soon? Or maybe I should have dropped like Ryan O'Reilly instead of Cam Atkinson and Cupful. Like, where are we right now with Ryan O'Reilly?
We're in the same place we've been for a lot of the season, which is this sort of acknowledgement that there's no go-to line in St. Louis anymore. They stretch their offense across a pretty nice and well-rounded top 9, and O'Reilly is just not being asked to do the same kind of heavy lifting before. And so he isn't. I mean, look at the last game that St. Louis played. Shen Barbashev Cairo had a goal. Perron O'Reilly Saad had a goal. Tarasenko Buchnevich Thomas had a goal. And you try and order those lines from 1, 2, and 3. I mean, I would probably say, I don't know. I would normally say Perron O'Reilly Saad is your line 1. But the way Perron and O'Reilly have been playing, I wouldn't say that. I'd say Tarasenko Buchnevich Thomas is your line 1. Shen Barbashev Cairo is the one that's definitely not your top line, but they all did well. And so I think that's all that's happening in St. Louis. And we've had this discussion again. Sorry, I can't remember if this was on a show or on a patron cast or in our patrons only Discord server, which, by the way, if you want to join, a lot of great conversation through the week, and analysis and questions asked and advice. KeepingKarlsson.com/patron for more info on that. But I think that's pretty much it. There's not a line. Like you look at the ice time, they had it 5-on-5. This is actually crazy. Each line had almost exactly 10 minutes and 40 seconds of ice at 5-on-5. They couldn't have spread it out better if they tried. 10:40, 10:40, and 10:37 were the respective line combo time on ice totals for the 3 units that I've been talking about. And I think that's it. So Ryan O'Reilly, unfortunately, takes a hit in his value. So does David Perron and anyone else in St. Louis. I think those are the 2 main guys. Braden Chen, who's already fallen off a little bit on his own. But both of those guys needed to be, 70, 80 point players the last few seasons because they were being relied upon in St. Louis. And now St. Louis is spreading it out.
Yeah. By the way, Braden Chen hot again. 3 points in his last 3 games before his 2 assists today. So yeah, I guess it's the same. No, Chen has been hot for a while. I think that was a okay off the air. Do you want to say that thing again and not say the thing about Braden Chen because it was just like demonstrably false? He's like the hottest player right now. Up to you, or I could just correct you. Up to you.
Well, let me just
take a look at this game log where he's scoring goals, like 1 million goals over the past month.
Okay, yeah, you're right. So just take it out. That's fine.
Would you want to go back to say whatever you're saying again and not say the thing about Braden Chen?
I don't really remember. So why don't you correct me?
Okay.
And then you can either take both parts out or just he really has turned it on.
Yeah.
You correct me, I'll acknowledge, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, hard to predict what's going to happen in the St. Louis top 6. Braden Chen, by the way, definitely not cold. That was like maybe something that was true to say earlier in the year in December when he was dropped in a bunch of leagues. Now he is someone that anyone who dropped him is definitely regretting it because he's scoring goals almost every game. And today he's had 2 assists. So yeah, I just wish that Ryan O'Reilly could do what Braden Chen is doing. I'd be very happy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wrote Chen off prematurely, but I will still say that Braden Chen, I'm looking at his points participation and his on-ice shooting percentage and his shooting percentage. It's all too high. So if you want Ryan O'Reilly to be doing what Braden Chen is doing, you want Ryan O'Reilly to be producing unsustainably, which is definitely better than what O'Reilly is doing now. but Schenn on a 71 point pace through there was a big down, and then there's been a huge up since that down. I'm not sure you can, I would not be counting on Brayden Schenn to be definitely outpacing O'Reilly and Perron's 55, 60 point paces the rest of the way. As good as he's been lately, I'm not bought in. Great sell high time, IMO.
Yeah, I guess depends how high you can sell. People might remember that he was struggling before. He could slow down a little bit and still have a lot of value with what he's been doing. But yeah, St. Louis, they're such a good team. I think this win today was their 5th in a row. They lost to the Habs because the Habs are such a good team now, apparently. Before that, they won a couple in a row before that. So St. Louis really coming on strong, and they're going to be an interesting team to watch in the playoffs. Okay, Brad, I got one more player to bring up to you, a cold streak, and that's in Dallas. John Klingberg. Like I mentioned, at one point, I traded for him in a league. I gave a second and a third, and I dumped Mike Smith, who then had a good start, to get John Klingberg, who I think maybe I blew it because he stinks. He had nothing versus Buffalo today. Now he's pointless in 5. Yeah. And by nothing, by the way, I mean it was a cardio workout, like we coined on the last show. No shots, he had a single block in his stat line in this game today. So John Klingberg just doing nothing for me.
And the game before, he had a single shot and nothing else. This is the story of John Klingberg, Elon. I think we've been telling the story of John Klingberg all season long, which is that if he's not producing points, he's not very helpful to you, and he does seem to run hot and cold. Right now, he's cold. He's fallen back below a 50-point pace, but for the rest of the season, I still think he'll pace around 50 points, but he's not a very exciting player to have in fantasy, despite having continued top power play deployment. Although I'm just looking at his last couple games. What's Dallas doing the last couple days on the power play? Are they running 2 equal units? He's right around 50% the last 2 outings.
I don't know. I know Esa Lindell had a power play assist today, which annoyed me. So yeah,
as it should. It doesn't look like they're running. I think, Klingberg was playing with Heiskanen on what seems to be the top unit. I can't. This is life with John Klingberg, Elon. I'm sorry, it's not fun. I've had him before, and he's one of the players that I try to avoid now for this reason. But overall, if you're just going to look at his point output the rest of the season, I see no reason to expect that he's going to stray far from a 50-point pace.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I freaked out because Tony DeAngelo got injured, and I had this glaring hole, and I thought, I could get a different top power play defenseman, but they're not the same. Tony DeAngelo is better, I think, unfortunately for me. Brad, that's all I've got. So off the air, did you want to bring up any of the players you wanted to bring up, or do you want me to just wrap up the show?
I think we can wrap up. I was just, trying to come up with guys, but I think we're good.
All right, that's all I've got. This has been such a blast going through all of these players and teams with you. I hope that the people listening to the show have enjoyed it. You could always let us know if you enjoyed it or not. Tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. We love to hear your feedback. You could also ask us any advice questions on Twitter, and we try to help you out within around 24 hours. If you really want to get faster responses, come hang out with us on Discord, keepingkarlsson.com/patron. That's one of our perks. We also have some other perks, including our monthly patron cast, show notes that we share with the patrons. So, we're having fun, and we ask you for your support, $5 a month. And thanks so much to all the patrons who have been with us all season long. We hope that we've made it worth your while. Also, thanks to everyone who joined us live here. But I think with that, I'll just stop rambling, let you know that we've got a couple more short shift shows coming next week. We're going to keep churning out this content through to the fantasy playoffs. We want to help everyone listening be as successful as they can, and hopefully we'll get some championships from our listeners. But with that, Brian, let's cue the outro music. Why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters. I've been logged out, so I need to log back in. Two-factor authentication.
Lafreniere just scored a goal, and he scored in the last game too. I wonder if he's good now. One day he'll be good. Maybe today's that day.
Yeah, he had a good game. Was it the last game?
Yeah, this is his third goal, and good for him. I'll mention it in the outro.
Okay. All right. Special thanks to us. I'll just start over because that'll be easier for that probably. All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters, David, Derek, Jake, Tom, Rob, Patty, Andrea, Christopher, Flash, and our newest super supporter, Tyler. Thanks for coming on board. We really appreciate that. Thank you to our Cupful coordinator, Kevin A. Bear, and our team of co-commissions. More information on the Cupful at kkupfl.com. And also shout out to Shams Benamor for keeping the amazing stream of fantasy news rolling on at Game Day Lines, at Game Day News NHL, and at Game Day Goalies, all essential follows for your fantasy success. You can also follow Ben and Lewis, whose Short Shifts episodes are coming at you through the week at Short Shifts KK. And you can follow Dave Betton at NHL Stream Scheme. Logo art by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dobber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, NBC Sports Edge, and Yahoo.
Great job, as always, Brian. I really had a nice time this evening. I'm going to go eat some Egyptian food now. So let's just tell everyone what they can do while they wait for our next episodes to drop.
You don't want to mention Lafreniere?
Nah, I changed my mind.
Okay. All right. Okay. What can we do? Let's keep doing...
I'll just jump in. Now that I say it, I feel like it sounds like I'm asking you to say something bad. Like, I'll tell you what you can do. You can go.
I'll tell you where to go. Well, I think you should keep it, like, bringing up the Egyptian food was kind of funny, because I think that is something we talked about that is not actually going to make the show. So keep yourselves well fed, well nourished, take care of yourselves, and also join us in doing all that you can to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone.
I think I'm going to keep the thing in about the Egyptian food. I don't know how I'd cut it out.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Maybe it was stupid. I don't know.
What's the food? Do you know what you're eating?
Yeah, it's there's like this rice with shrimps. There's this like eggplant thing. There's hummus with pita and baba ganoush.
I don't know if you saying that is like...
I like saying baba ganoush. It's a fun word.
Yeah.
All right. So that was great. I had a lot of fun. I wasn't even lying. Sorry that you lost. I saw that Brian Rust did some damage to you.
Just, like, you know who ended my week, if you just want to know specifically. Paul Stasny, Nate Schmidt, and Jordan Chikrin.
Jacob Chikrin.
No, all of them.
No, you said
concert.
Jordan. But yeah.
Oh, Jacob Chikrin. Sorry.
Well, that's a bummer.
Yeah, that'll just about crush my playoff hopes. This is a team, by the way. They're 6-11. They've just beat me for the second time this year.
Who is it? Let's give him a call out. What's
Mike.
the team name? Oh, it's Mike?
Jeeves NHL.
Oh, former tier 1 like competitor. Right?
No, that's a different Mike.
Oh, okay. A future tier 1 competitor. Or I guess not if you're saying he's 6-11.
Yeah.
Maybe one day, not next year.
I mean, good. Clearly, like, in tier 2, solid fantasy player. I can be mad. I'm just like, you're going to win 7 times and I'm going to comprise almost a third of those wins. That makes me mad.
Sorry, pal. Let's cut him off. Let's cancel his Patreon.
Blocked. Wouldn't that be great if anyone who ever beat us, we blocked? I wonder how long it would take for anyone to like figure that out, that was happening.
I mean, it depends also. Like, I'm in a league with, Ben and Lewis, like something like a lot of people who, if we blocked them, it would be kind of weird. Like, we'd have to start overhauling a lot of what we do. But I don't like it. I don't like losing. But, it's one of those things in fantasy. Like, I think you have to come to realize that. This is the thing I've been trying to tell myself in the last couple of years when I lose. It's supposed to be for fun. Just because you lose doesn't mean it's not fun. Yeah. Like, in every game you play, there's a winner and a loser. Blah blah blah. I still want to win.
Unless you're a child, then you're always a winner.
Sam said that's not the right strategy.
I appreciate that.
You're a good uncle. Service,
but like, if they're a sensitive kid, I feel like if I can see the sadness in their eyes as they lose, and like, yeah, it's great they have to face adversity, but why do I have to be the jerk who puts them through it? They're not going to appreciate that down the road. They're just going to remember that Uncle Brian's a jerk.
Well, I'm sure you weren't rubbing it in. It's not like you're like, take that, sucker.
No, but you think he's going to want to play. He's pretty good at chess, though.
Could he beat you?
Well, so he was playing my 3-year-old kid who doesn't know how to play chess. And like about halfway through, I took over the game, like, because my 3-year-old was obviously losing interest. And he was getting mad, the 5-year-old, because like, he's like, she doesn't know how to play. I'm like, you're right.
Well, why did that game even start? Like, how did that even happen?
He loves chess. Anytime anyone comes over, he starts a game of chess with them. Like, that's just... and I didn't see it happening, but like he was like basically playing both sides, and like my kid was just like, I think I'm gonna move this piece here, and then he's like, no, you can move it here or here. So then she'd randomly choose a spot, and I tried to come in and like clean up, you know, her side and mess and win the game, and I couldn't, which is either a credit to him.
Or just how bad your daughter is at chess.
Yeah. I mean, can you be bad at a game that you're not actually playing?
So I had this guy in grad school that we had like a group of nerdy friends. We used to play Settlers of Catan all the time. And there's this one guy like just couldn't understand the rules. And it was like, he was very bad at it. But I guess by your logic, you're saying that like it doesn't count since he didn't know the rules. But it's like one rule and set. Look, the general gist of the game is like when you roll the dice, you know, so if you roll like an 8, then you look at all the pieces that have an 8 on them, and all those ones get like resources, right? But then the only exception is if you roll a 7, something else happens. And every single time someone would roll a 7, like, all right, 7, who's got 7? You know, looking, and it's like, Fran, there's no, like when 7 is rolled, there's no resources. Something else happens, and it was like. I just remember, like, it just never got there. We played so often.
Why do you think he couldn't get it?
I don't know. It probably more like a lack of attempting to get it rather than like not being smart enough. Just like he just probably just wanted to hang out and drink, and like that's just what the crew was doing.
That would have been my assumption too.
Yeah. So,
but like playing with him and wanting everyone to know and understand the rules, that would have been.
There's also a really funny story. We would sometimes play in teams because you can only do like I think 4 players max or something. And it was Dina and I were on a team together, and then Fram was playing with this other guy who was like really good, and then that guy went to the bathroom, and then while he was in the bathroom, Dina, like, because you could trade your cards with people, and we like made a trade with Fram, and then like the guy came back to the bathroom and was like, hey, where's all our wheat? And I was like, oh my, I traded the wheat. He was so mad.
And you knowingly did it, like you saw your opportunity.
It was actually Dina who like swindled him.
So Dina saw her opportunity. I'm just like confirming that this was like
it was a really good deal for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.